What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? It is Friday, May 17th, 2024, and we're doing a Cuz I Wanna with Godless Granny. Hey there, Godless Granny. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's great to have you here. I'm so glad that we could schedule this. If y'all don't know Godless Granny, she's got great content over there on her channel. So if you want to go and check her out, I'm sure the links are either in the side chat right now or they are in the description. So you can go and check her out. And of course, I'm the host of the because I want this show tonight, Godless Engineer. And I'm sure my links are everywhere. So you guys can go and follow me there. But tonight, we just wanted to take some calls from theists and, you know, maybe some non-theists out there if they got good questions about things that we can touch on. But Godless Granny, why don't you know? I kind of told people about you, but why don't you actually tell people about yourself and what you do over there on your channel?
Thank you. I do a little bit of a lot of different things, but primarily anti-theism. But I'm also an advocate for the LGBTQ community. I have a transgender son, so as a trans parent, I am especially concerned with the rights of transgender people. I do a little bit of politics, particularly as it is pushed by religion. I do a little bit of debunking creationists because, again, how that affects our normal lives. Basically, I stand opposed to anything that's going to cause us to have to deny reality in order to live our lives.
Yeah, and I think all those are great topics to cover and something that people need to be paying attention to a lot right now. Speaking of politics, one of the things that has really kind of gotten under some people's skin has been this Harrison Butker commencement speech, where he basically told women to get back into the kitchen, that they've been taught diabolical lies, and then also threw some shade at the LGBTQ community, calling them like what was it, a deadly sin. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I'm wondering what, from your particular perspective, what do you think about his speech? What do you think about his message to all of the graduating women there and LGBTQ students?
Well, first, I think that this is very typical of what we hear from the hard right and from the hardcore evangelicals. Um, some of them are more blatant and more outspoken. Some of them say the quiet part out loud, like he did, and a lot of them just think that. And there's too many people that look at that and say, "Oh, it's not so bad." But really, if you want to put it in perspective, put a different group in place of women or the LGBTQ community, and you can see just how bad it is. If instead of saying, well, women should just remain in the kitchen in their place, if he had said, well, I'm fine with black people as long as they remain in their place, no one would find that acceptable. So why is it acceptable to say that women need to stay in their place? And as far as the LGBTQ community saying that, I'm fine with them except they're all a bunch of sinners, you know, that's like saying, well, I can hate on you, but that's okay. And no, that's not okay.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of Christians out there are really propping up Harrison right now. He's been fined by the NFL for his comments $100,000, which is no
Mhm.
small amount. I mean, I believe that he's just a kicker on the team, so I'm not sure how much he makes, nor do I really care. But $100,000 isn't something to scoff at necessarily. But I kind of feel like it's a, oh no, they charged him money to say all of this hateful stuff at a commencement speech. And
Mhm.
I find it pretty pretty much just a light tap on the hand, like, like, don't do that, we don't like that, but we're not going to do anything that's really going to get your attention. At least I don't feel like it's a big attention getter for him. But do you feel like this is just another piece of evidence that like Christian nationalism is really on the rise to like popularity and a wider acceptance?
Absolutely. I think there's no question that Christian nationalism is gaining ground, and we have our work cut out for us in trying to put it back down again. I don't fault the NFL though, because I mean, look at
Mhm.
what the NFL has done when players have been caught with DWIs, assaulting people. The fine that they gave him was pretty stiff for having just used words. If he had gone and
Mhm.
belted a woman, I would say, yeah, they let him off too easy. But I'm actually I'm fairly pleased that the NFL did not just you let him get away with it and not say anything.
Oh, it's definitely, better than doing nothing at all. And I guess putting it in that perspective, it actually is a pretty at least, somewhat substantial consequence to suffer, I guess. But as far as like Christian nationalism goes and all that kind of stuff, do you consider that to be a major threat, like in our
Absolutely.
atmosphere right now?
Absolutely. The biggest question, the biggest thing I think though is that too many Christians, when you get down into the rank and file, either don't know what Christian nationalism is, or they're confused on what it is. And there was a recent conversation that I responded to where I can't remember who it was that was in the conversation, but he was a staunch defender of Christian nationalism, but when he defined Christian nationalism, it became clear that the guy had no clue what Christian nationalism was. Um, because he said, "Well, I don't want to make Christianity the law." Well, that's what Christian nationalism is all about. um, and so I think there's too many people that go along with it without really realizing what it is. And I think this is going to be one of those things where people are led step by step into the really bad stuff that could lead us into a world like Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. That's what I fear is
Mhm.
I can't believe how prophetic that book is.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be like a pretty good roadmap. Like, oh, hey, this is how the United States is going to get fucked eventually.
Mhm, mhm.
Now, just to let everybody know, this is a call-in show. So if you have any kind of disagreement or anything like that with anything that we're talking about here at the very beginning of the show, please do call in. We would love to have a conversation with you, especially if you disagree with what we are saying, or we're both atheists and we both think that the arguments for God are really bad. So if you think you got a good argument for God, you can also call in and try your hand at convincing us that God is real. You might make us theists by the end of it. Who knows? I'm just trying to give you a little bit of hope there. Um, but the
And
number
all they have to do
is,
is pray
oh,
about it. Sorry.
I mean, that should work. No, no, you're fine. Yeah,
Right?
it should work. Just praying about it. I mean, come on. But the number is 720-619-2288. You can call in, or there's a link in the description. If you're outside of the United States, you can hit that and you can call in for free. Or if you don't want to use a phone or anything, you can still hit that call in link down there and you can call in through the web. So as far as Christianity, religion goes in our society in general, do you have like a particular argument for God that you think is like just the worst?
Yeah, Romans 1:20. Um,
Is that
Romans
the one where
1:20,
it's like, go
it's
ahead?
it's the invisible attributes of God are clearly seen so that all are without excuse. And the reason I think that this is the worst is because number one, the one thing that I can be absolutely certain of is my own thoughts. And
Mhm.
for a theist to come at me and to tell me that I am suppressing the truth and unrighteousness and I know there's a God means that they think they know my thoughts better than I do. And I'm sorry. No, you don't. And to my response to anyone who claims to know my thoughts better than I do is, tell me the name of my third grade teacher. If you can tell me the name of my third grade teacher, then I'll believe that you have a connection straight to God and he has told you what my thoughts are.
Yeah. That's a pretty bad one. That one always grinds my gears too, because of the fact that like that's not how invisible shit works. Like when you
Mhm.
talk about these are the invisible attributes, I think of, oh well, we can't just see it, right? Like we can't
Mhm.
see these attributes. But I feel like getting more at the heart of our problem with God is that he's not detectable whatsoever. So
Yes.
it's not
Mhm.
just like, it's not just we can't see God, therefore we don't believe in him. That's a really simplistic way of doing it. It's like we can't actually detect that this guy exists and has any kind of control over our world. So why believe in that God? And I mean, there's so many theists out there that will just throw scripture at you, whether that's from the Quran or whatever holy book, including the Bible. They just seem to throw scripture. It's like, well, this proves it. It's like, no, that's some asshole back in the, before the Common Era, telling us what he thinks about this divine asshole in the sky.
Yeah, that's exactly how I came to be an atheist as well, is I did a very careful scrutiny of my own faith 35 years ago when my firstborn died, and I identified the foundation of my faith as being sola scriptura. And so I
Mhm.
would believe, as long as the Bible was the complete, inerrant word of God, as I had been taught by my pastors, and as long as I knew that the Bible was the complete, inerrant word of God, I would follow it and believe it no matter what. But because that was the foundation of my faith, all anyone needed to do was prove to me that the Bible was not the complete, inerrant word of God in order to destroy the whole thing, which is what Aron Ra did. And he did it with a one single word. I was watching a video of him at the Ark protest, and he was telling a guy, "We know that the Noah's flood didn't happen. We know this from biology, geology, history." And when he said the word history, my faith just vanished in a poof of smoke, because not only did I know he was right, I knew that I'd always known it. I just had never put it together because I knew enough about ancient Chinese history to know that there was never a period when all of the people just suddenly died and the entire land was vacant for somewhere between 100 and 300 years. And then Babylonians came along and repopulated the land. And that's one of my favorite questions to people who believe in a global flood, is if there was a global flood followed by the Tower of Babel, where is the Babylonian pottery in China, India, South America, and Great Britain? We would need to be able to find evidence of Babylonian civilization in all those places, and we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I mean, there's so many different problems with that. But I know that a lot of creationists assert that the that there are so many cultures across the world that have flood myths. Like
Mhm,
even
mhm.
even over here in the quote unquote New World, like the Americas, South America, North America, and all that, they have these flood myths. What do you think about that?
Well, every culture has fire stories too, but there was never a global fire. Every culture
Yeah.
has earthquake stories, but there was never a global earthquake. It's just a
Mhm.
common disaster that happens. Humans need water to live. And so all civilizations begin near waterways because humans need water to live. And waterways flood. And so we have flood stories.
Yeah, if God actually created us, like, intricately designed us and everything, and designed, the earth and everything, why did he make us dependent on, fresh water and then pretty much fill most of the earth with salt water. Like that's not something in the creationist mindset. That's something that, you know, it didn't just happen like naturally through how we know, like the water cycle rains on land, collects the salts and everything like that, and washes out into the ocean. After millions and millions of years of that, that's how we get, you know, the salty seas and everything. God would deliberately have to create the salty seas like that, and deliberately create us to be dependent on fresh water specifically, with no discernible way to actually change the seawater into fresh water. I mean, it, like when he starts getting into the weeds of all the logic entailed by creationism, it really does seem ridiculous.
Yeah, another one that I don't normally see creationists address is that if there was no death before the fall, that would mean that our bodies had to be in such a way that if we ate something, we weren't dependent on eating. We could not starve to death. If we held our breaths, we could not suffocate. And so, did we even have internal organs at that point? Or did internal organs suddenly appear after the fall? And what about animals? You know, supposedly AIG says that everything was vegetarian. Well, the digestive tract of a vegetarian animal is different than the digestive tract of a carnivorous animal. Did God just suddenly change all their digestive tracts? It just doesn't even make sense. And even
Well,
if
no,
he
no, no.
did, I was
Yeah,
going to say,
I
even
was
if
gonna
he
say,
did, I'm sorry, the lag is giving
go.
us a little bit of trouble here, but um,
That's fine. You go
yeah,
ahead.
there's such a short period of time between the original creation and the fall to make all these things, knowing that you're going to have to remake them just a few days later. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And don't forget, though, it's not God's fault. Like, he didn't change everything. Eve ate a fruit salad, and therefore we all have, you know, like it fundamentally changed everything. And, you know, women have to go through painful childbirth, and men get the pain of just having to eat stuff. We
Well,
got to
did it
eat
all
stuff, and
just
that's our
go
punishment.
poof? Did it all just go
Uh,
poof
I,
when Eve ate the apple?
well, it would have been Eve ate the fruit, and then she gave it to Adam. And as soon as Adam took the bite, everything went poof. And God's like, "What the fuck is this?" That's exactly how it happened. I mean, I'm telling you. Letting everybody know that's in the chat right now, we have all the lines open. So if you have a problem with anything we said about the whole Butker commencement speech, or anything about religion or anything like that, feel free to call in. The number is 720-619-2288, or there is a call-in link down below if you want to use that. So here going back to the butt key thing a little bit. One thing that I've always kind of addressed is this whole thing about how one of the core ideas baked into especially Christianity, but a lot of other religions too, is misogyny. So I mean, do you recognize that too? Like, do you find that like Christianity and Islam and like the Abrahamic religions and even other religions are very misogynistic in nature?
Holy shit, yes. Um, that was that was really tough for me. Um, I it's First Corinthians, I believe 7 is the verses that, you know, say that the wife's body doesn't belong to her, but it belongs to her husband, and the husband's body belongs to the wife. And some people look at that and say, "Hey, it's equality. You both have the same." No, it's not. Because in addition to that, the wife is supposed to submit. And I've been to a number of churches that say that if a man wants sex, the wife has a duty to submit, whether she wants to or not, because it's not her body, it's his. And
Mhm.
he does not have that same command because he doesn't have to submit to his wife. And I lived that. I lived it until it nearly drove me crazy.
Yeah, and in Christianity, like, well, I guess not necessarily Christianity specifically, but in pop culture, modern culture, or whatnot. This I've always found it to be really weird. This whole idea of like asking the father if it's okay to marry the daughter. Like that's always been a little confusing to me. Like it's always been told to me, like, well, that's just how things work. And so like I just thought that that's how things work. But after becoming or leaving religion and becoming an atheist, I start thinking about it. It's like that seems like a really weird thing to do. Like why would you ask the father? And that's because of this whole idea that like the men own the women and the men control the women. And in Christianity, especially in the Old Testament, but it doesn't disappear in the New Testament, but men are in control and own women like their property. And
Mm-hmm.
several scholars have identified that all of this, the way that the Bible treats women and everything like that, is definitely sexual slavery. Like women are forced into sexual slavery in various ways in the Bible.
Are you familiar with Dr. Jennifer Bird?
I haven't read any of her stuff, but I have seen her on making the rounds on all the YouTube channels and
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Yeah, I had her on and we were talking about her book on marriage, and we got into this pretty deep. Because when I got her book, I got to have her on first. I was really lucky. I had her on, it was either 2 days before or 2 days after her book released. And she wrote a book on marriage, on biblical marriage. And I was fully expecting this to be a book that said, oh, the Bible says this, but that's not really what it means. And what it really means, is that it's supposed to be more of an equal relationship. And no, her book was exactly the opposite. She looked at it and said, no, the Bible really means that women were the property of their fathers until their fathers sold them to a husband, and then they were the property of their husband. Women were not people, they were property.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that whole sentiment, being that women are the property of men, is carried over into our modern pop culture by instances like Butker's commencement speech, thinking that
Yeah.
it's the woman's place to be a helpmeet for the man.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this got brought up at least the first time that I really interacted with this theology, I guess, was with the Duggars, because back like 2014, 2015, like the Duggars had done something that got a lot of notoriety, other than the one being a pedophile. um the they were gaining notoriety and everything like that. And this whole idea of being a helpmeet always seemed really, it always struck me as being very misogynistic. Like you own the women, and I've never felt that way about anybody in my life, so it's always confused me.
I really resent seeing Muslim women. And it's not the women that I resent. It's their clothing. Because
Mhm.
it just really irks me to see a woman wearing a symbol to say, I am an inferior person. And I just want to rip that burqa off and say, you are not an inferior person. You don't need a symbol of your inferiority. But of course, I
Mhm.
don't do that.
Yeah. I remember an image that was passed around like early 2010s or so, that was a pretty big, like, put a pretty big spotlight on the issue with that, what Islam has women go through usually. And that's there was a father and his child swimming in this beach area, and of course his wife was fully clothed,
Hmm.
with the full I guess burqa on, and standing on the beach, like out of the water, because she couldn't go in the water. And it's like, if you can't see the problem with this picture right here, then there's just simply no hope for you.
One thing I like to bring up, especially to the compatibilists, is have you ever read Brown versus Board of Education? Separate is inherently unequal. And if you're going to say, well, women are equal, but they have separate roles, No, separate is inherently unequal. If women don't have a seat at the table, you are not only depriving women of being able to develop and use their skills and abilities, you're also depriving men of the opinions that they could get, of the skill sets they could get, if they would allow the women to have an equal seat.
Yeah, somebody corrected me in the comments saying that it's called a hijab. I don't know the different clothing that is generally worn. So hijab, uh, burqa also could be considered a bit, I guess, oppressive at times, depending on how it's done. But if you want to call in and talk to us about anything that we're talking about, you can call 720-619-2288. We have all lines open if you want to call in and talk to us. Hey, if you believe in God, we'd love to talk to you about why you believe in God. Or if you think that you can convince us to believe in God, we would really love for you to call in for that. Or if you're an atheist and you want some advice, or you're atheist and you disagree with some of the things that we've been talking about as far as all the woke shit that we've talked about tonight, like women's rights and stuff. You think we're wrong about that? Please do call in. We would love to have a conversation with you. So one of the things that I've kind of touched on my channel as far as the existence of God discussion goes has been the Kalam cosmological argument. And I'm wondering, what do you think about the Kalam?
I think of the theist arguments, that's probably the strongest one at the moment. But it doesn't get you to a God. All it gets you to is a cause. I think there is good reason to believe that the universe had a cause, but that's all it gets you to, is that the universe had a cause. I also fully think that, and I don't know that it's going to come in my lifetime. I don't expect to have more than about another 15 years to go. But I do think in your lifetime, we will discover what the origin of the universe was.
I mean, it's always a possibility because we're always, searching for, what's the best explanation and everything like that. Which, I mean, obviously, right now the best explanation, I think, at least one of them is a quantum fluctuation. That's one. There's a whole host of other possibilities out there that could explain the beginning of the universe. Of course, none of that includes like a magical incantation spoke by an old wizard dude.
Uh, One that I saw that was quite interesting, and I don't fully understand it. If there's any cosmologists in the chat, maybe one of them could call in and explain it a little bit further. But it was the discovery of, it's not dark matter, but it's some kind of dark particles or antimatter that could have something to do with the cause of the origin of the universe. And like I said, I don't fully understand it, but it was an interesting theory to read about.
Yeah, there's so many different like great ideas out there as to what could have started the universe. Honestly, I'm totally stoked for doing some like more space exploration type of stuff. I know that we're supposed to be going back to the moon here soon, which I'm totally excited for that. Although I'm sure that flat earthers are losing their shit about it, but obviously they think that it's just some big cash grab.
Well, it's interesting. I watched a video where a flat earther was on a live stream with atheist pastor and polymathic Jen, and they showed him a video of a space, with the spaceship taking off and the view of Earth as it took off, and he got to experience it as the astronaut did from space. But the flat earther wasn't convinced at all, because he said, no matter where this view is going, I'm still only seeing a flat um, picture here. Yeah. And I'm going,
So like the video's flat. Like, do we have to project it onto an IMAX screen for you to see it? I mean,
I guess he needs a 3D image.
Yeah. Or maybe he wants Jeff Bezos to fly him up there in his penis rocket.
I don't know that even that would convince him, because I think he would still look out the window and say, well, what I'm seeing here is still just a disc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, probably. Honestly, I get the feeling from a lot of flat earthers that they are just so helplessly tied to the idea that the earth is flat that they will just reject everything. They'll reject everything that is shown to them, or any explanation as to why they are wrong about the shape of the earth.
Well, one thing I can never get, and I don't interact with flat earthers much, but when I do, one question I always ask is, how thick is the disk? And I can never get a straight answer to that question, because no matter what thickness that disk is, it's not completely flat. It's got some depth. So if nothing else, it's got to at least be a cylinder. And we know from the fact that you can stick a shovel in the ground and not puncture the disc that it's got to have some depth. The question, how much depth do they think it has?
No idea. But we do have Robert, who's an atheist, on the line. Do you want to go ahead and take his call?
That sounds great. Sure.
Awesome. Let's talk to Robert. Hi there, Robert. How you doing?
Oh, am I on already? Okay, sorry about that. Like I'm actually kind of watching it as I. Hello?
Yeah. Are you there?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, I'm there. It's like, hi, is this John and Godless Granny?
Hello. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Oh, yeah. So my question is, if there is a God that exists, but it's not a God that is lacks competence, or whether it lacks like sentience, worthy of worship, but is that God worthy of forgiveness?
Well, what would we
So
need to forgive this God for?
Basically, all the things that people say is like, oh, well, if knowing, he can't be benevolent, et cetera. But like, what if there's a God?
Robert, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not sure I don't know if you have like a low signal or something, but you keep going in and out, so it's kind of hard for us to follow along.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I think I caught the gist of what you're saying, though. I think I caught the gist of that. Okay, if there's a God, should we forgive this God for all of the bad things that have happened, assuming that this God does not have the triomnic characteristics? And I would say, well, first of all, does this God want our forgiveness? If this God, doesn't have the triomnic characteristics and doesn't have any kind of relationship with humans, it sounds like, and this is the kind of God that I could get behind and could believe in, and that is one that just simply started the Big Bang and then either drifted off into space or maybe ceased to exist, but has no concern for humans. And if it has no concern for humans, I wouldn't think it would want any forgiveness. It just it is what it is.
What say you, John?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a God that's not triomni, but is benevolent, I'm reading the show's call-in notes here, with the benevolent part, but I would think that if it's not a triomni God, but he's a God that's a creator God that controls things that happens in our reality. I agree with Godless Granny. Like, why would he care about us forgiving him or caring about him necessarily? But also this whole idea of this God, being forgiven. I don't like if he had some kind of active role in all of the things that have happened, then no, I wouldn't forgive that entity. Like if he had an active role in it. But I mean, if this is like a deity that exists out there and he doesn't have anything to do with it, then there's nothing to forgive him for, kind of thing. So I think it really kind of depends on a more specific description of the situation rather than, I guess, a non-nuanced discussion over, speculative properties about this god.
On the other hand, go ahead. Well, what I was going to say is, on the other hand, if this is a God that, doesn't have the omniscience to know what was going to happen if he created the universe, and he created the universe and it turned out the way it has, and maybe this God regrets having the evil that is in the world and is seeking human forgiveness because this isn't what I meant it to be. I think I could forgive such a God. And because I think I could, because I would say, okay, yeah, you created a world that has a lot of evil, but there's a lot of good things here too. And I would prefer to have my life rather than non-life. And so for that reason, if this God was contrite over the fact that he made this world that didn't turn out the way he meant it to be, I'd say, okay, so you fucked up a little bit, but hey, overall it's a pretty good place. We're okay with it.
Wow. I like that response.
All right. Well, unless you have another question there, Robert, we do have a theist on the line that we want to get to. So unless you get another question, do you? Sorry, was that a no?
Show.
Okay. well, we'll talk to you later there, Robert. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Robert.
I hate that we didn't have a good connection there, but I'm glad that we were able still to parse out the exact question. And yeah, I do think that there are certain situations where, I would be open to the whole forgiveness thing, but I'm still kind of like, it's still rather undefined and hard to give like a concrete answer one way or another. So I like how we brainstorm different scenarios. Oh yeah, definitely not. All right. Well, we've got a perfect call. John, I believe that's from Washington or maybe the local Wawa down the street. I think Wawas are convenience stores. Hi there, John. How you doing?
Is there?
Oh, no. Oh, hey.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Well, what's up there, John? How you doing?
Good. Hey, the reason I'm calling, I just wanted, I was overhearing Godless Granny speak about and she mentioned the scripture there in 1 Corinthians related to the wife having authority over her husband. Let the husband give to his wife her due, and let the wife also do likewise to her husband. So scripturally, I mean, regardless, due would be, universally between the husband and wife, not one over the other. So
Yes, but then when you get into practical matters, if the husband isn't doing his part, the wife has no right to say anything about it. But if the wife isn't doing her part, the husband scripturally has the right to say something about it. And that's where the inequality comes in.
authority over the husband, but right. I mean, we know from the apostles they talked about.
I'm not sure what's going on, John, but you are cutting in and out on occasion.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fine. I don't know if maybe the signal's bad on your end or whatnot. We tested things out on our end, so it shouldn't be like an issue on our end. So I don't know if there's anything going on your end.
Anyhow, if you can hear me, I guess I would. Over her husband.
All we caught was Asian over her husband.
Yeah, I'm going to cut in here. Let's bring John back to the queue. I'm really sorry, John. We would like to talk to you. Okay. Maybe we'll talk to you in just a minute. I'm going to call in actually from my phone and test audio to see if it can help me get a sense of what's going on here, because we ran the test before and it seemed like you guys could hear me and I didn't notice anything wrong, so I'm not really sure exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
My undergrad major is in mass comm, and one thing that we were taught to absolutely abhor was dead air. You never allow dead air, and so I'm going nuts here, allowing any dead air.
Okay, I'm live. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, hear you just fine. So I think that.
Tell us a story, Arden. Maybe see if you're okay after a minute.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's going on.
It is on our end.
Yeah, okay. I'm back on the producer mic. I was still talking and it cut out, so I'm not really sure exactly what this is, because it doesn't make sense that it's working part of the time and then not part of the time. I could be calling studio, might have their own connection. That is a problem, but I don't know. Let's maybe restart the show through call-in studio and see if that can help improve the quality. To the callers who are listening right now on the line, it should keep you on, but if it doesn't, please just call back right away. We'll get you pushed through the screening process plenty fast enough. But I don't know what else to do to try to maintain the show.
All right. Well, while we're restarting the show and getting our callers back, I left religion after, I guess, it being proposed to me, like, the fact that you cannot believe in God. Like, I grew up with no kind of sense of this idea that you don't have to believe in God. Like, it's always been put forth to me like, oh, you have to believe in a God, or God exists de facto. Like, that's just how it happens. And so I don't know if you had a similar experience there.
No, not at all. My parents were Catholic when I was very young, and they left the Catholic Church when I was 7. And so most of my formative years, I was actually raised agnostic. My mother had a very interesting view, which was there is no God, but if there is a God, it's the Catholic God, because the Catholics are the one true religion. but my dad
I grew up Catholic
agnostic.
too.
But my dad was completely agnostic. And I grew up in a family that was pretty much half and half. My mother's father was devout Catholic, to the point where most people just found him obnoxious. But I also had an uncle who was a devout atheist, who was an absolutely obnoxious atheist.
All right, you want to try to get John back on?
Yeah, let's bring
Sounds
John
good.
back on and test it out. I did reset Colin Studio, but I'm not sure that this will have solved the problem. Give it a shot.
Okay. Let's say, hey, John, are you there?
I am. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay?
So let
Try this again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's try this again. Can you ask your original question one more time?
Sure. I guess I was just mentioning, referring to 1 Corinthians 7, related to a wife having authority over her husband's body, and likewise, her husband over her. The scripture that precedes that talks about let the husband give to his wife her due, and let the wife also do likewise to her husband. So the main reason for the call is just to a minor counter to what was said earlier, that a woman doesn't have sole responsibility to submit herself that way to her husband. In fact, it is a mutual submission related to their due. So
Okay, but if the wife says, no, I don't want to, and the husband says, well, I want to anyway, does the wife have the duty to submit to what her husband is asking?
I mean, I would definitely say no, being married, but I suppose if a husband was acting up or acting out of character that in a way he shouldn't, the wife could always go to the congregation who has authority over the husband, right? So meaning you'd have a scenario where the wife wouldn't be precluded from having that issue brought to.
All right,
Well,
now
I
think
think
about that
what we're
practically.
asking.
Think
Well,
about
I
that
think that what
practically. The
Think about
wife
the
now
practice.
has to go to the pastor, who is a man, and reveal her sex life to her pastor. Do you really think that she's going to be comfortable with that?
When you say reveal sex life, I guess the details wouldn't have to be too arduous or too explicit. I would say that if there was a problem with the husband being too domineering over his wife, that would be something that the pastor would need to know. Or I don't even like to use the term pastor per se, but because I think it would be more than one person that would have to intervene. I would say it's the congregation in general, which can include women. So
You think
I
a
don't
woman's going to
know
go to the
necessarily.
congregation and start talking about her sex life?
Well, I would. Yeah.
Well, I have an issue with the fact that there are, like, it feels necessary to have outside opinion on this. Like, I feel like
Right.
if you're in a relationship, like a marriage like that, but like the husband is like, let's have sex, and the wife is like, no, I don't want to. Why do we need anybody else's opinion in that situation? Like, if you don't want to have sex, then you shouldn't be forced to have sex.
Well, I agree 100%, but we're talking about the unusual situation in which there's an issue or a problem. I don't think this is a common thing brought to congregations as an issue. But if a man...
Go ahead, finish your question.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, if a man is basically acting inappropriately towards his wife's wishes, then there could be recourse. That's my point. I don't think this is a common... Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
I don't know if this is a real common
what
problem.
if the man, he's not being domineering, he's being I don't even know if I know a word for this, but what he does is, oh, come on, please, I really, really want this. This is really what I want, please. And the
Emotionally
wife is
manipulative.
Thank you. And the wife is then expected to give her husband what he wants, because that's the duty of the wife is to please her husband, and it's the duty of the wife to put her husband's needs and desires ahead of her own. And it's not that the husband is forcing her; it's that he's putting her in a position where either she has to put her own interests ahead of his, or she has to submit her interests to his. And the Bible clearly says that she's supposed to submit them, whether she wants to or not. And that's the position I found myself in. Not someone that was forcing me physically, but someone who was appealing to me
Well,
in a way that I felt like I had no right to say no to.
well, I guess what you said real critically would be you're forced to do something you don't want to do, whether you like it or not. I would say there's no biblical scripture that says a woman has to do whatever her husband wants, regardless if she wants to or not. I mean, there's the submission aspect, but there's an appropriation to how that is used, and I think that's where soundness of mind. There's lots of others, scriptures that would come into play to help mitigate.
It,
Okay,
well, I
sorry.
mean, I can't think of a scripture, New Testament or Old Testament, that gives nuance to this whole submit, wives submit to your husbands thing. Can you recall in the New Testament when it lays out the hierarchy of the family? Where's the wife in that hierarchy?
Yeah, we go children, wife, husband, congregation, Christ. That would be the hierarchy.
I don't think congregation's in there. I think it goes from the top. It's God, Jesus, husband, wife, then children. So it kind of, I mean, I get that you're trying to make this argument that like both the wife and the husband are on the same level, but they're really not. And this is especially indicative in the.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's especially indicative in the how men and women are treated in the New and Old Testament, because like wives can only be the wife of one man, but how many wives can a man have and be perfectly fine?
In the Old Testament, that would be true. In the New Testament, that became less true, though it wasn't cause to remove someone from.
What scripture in the New Testament says you should only have one wife?
The one where Jesus is talking about the end of divorce, and he says, "Let a woman be married, let the two become one flesh." Basically, identifying two people as being union in a marriage, and then later on, even talking about the criteria of
but
authority
you have
in the
that
church,
one
that man of one wife. Yeah.
Well, right, but then you have two become one flesh, and then that one flesh is like, oh, hey, look, another wife. Oh, look, then now this two flesh become one flesh, and now you've got three fleshes in one flesh, and then you can add a fourth flesh, and then if they get a servant girl, oh, that's just more the merrier, right? And it doesn't seem to be a big problem until much later.
I would say that's not true in Christianity. I would say what you said. I'm just saying that from the history of Christianity down to the 2nd century on, that the idea of more being, married to more than one person, polygamous, was not an acceptable behavior. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I disagree.
Here's another thing to take into account, though, and that is what women are conditioned to believe about their position. Because we are conditioned to believe that we are lesser beings, that we are underneath the authority, and that our husbands are the ones that are responsible to God, and we are responsible to our husbands. We are conditioned to think of their interests first. And because of that, this is going to be difficult to say. The first time I ever even recognized what was going on in my own marriage was when my husband confessed to the pastor that he had committed the R word. I could not mentally admit to myself that that was what was going on until he said it out loud.
Yeah, that's awful. I mean, that's inexcusable. And I'm not trying to justify anything close to that at all. I wouldn't even begin to. I mean, it obviously, there are people that handle this relationship inappropriately, and there's where I do think the congregation is designed to come into the equation. I guess, and I'm not trying to create a separate relation to this issue, but I mean, if you took atheists or non-believers or whatever, I mean, these kinds of issues between husband and wife go on all the time, probably as well. I mean, it's designed to not be an overall solution. It's designed to be at least some structure. But there is one thing you said, and I do want to just give you one little additional information, or that I'm sure you know, but just to remind you that, when Jesus was talking to the Sadducees, I think it was, and they asked the question related to the woman who was married to 7 men, that illustration, and whose wife, basically the question was, whose wife would she be in the resurrection? Meaning, who would she belong to? And Jesus said, you're mistaken, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, neither do men marry nor women being given in marriage, but they are as angels in heaven. So the intent for the long term is to have equity between men and women. That's the plan. Now, there wouldn't be men and women per se, assuming the Bible is correct in this. But Jesus's response there does seem to indicate that's not the ultimate plan, is to have any inequity between genders, sex.
I don't hear that in that scripture at all.
Really? Because
the way I've always
they're asking who
she belongs to, but but instead he says that in heaven there is no marriage. Nobody belongs to anybody. So that doesn't necessarily mean there is equality. In fact, people certainly aren't going to be equal to God and Jesus in heaven, are they?
Not equal to them, but equal across, again, to say sexes doesn't make any sense or in heaven. But I would say that in the phrase, neither do men marry, nor are women given in marriage. And so I just overall, that would end the arrangement that we have here on earth.
Okay, so let me get this straight, because I feel like there's an implication here in what you're saying, is that all Christians in history have been wrong about the relationship between men and women up until it became this, it means for, men and women to be equal in all things. Like, we just now have discovered the true intent of God. So for the last more than 1,000 years, every single Christian has been wrong. Is that what you're saying? Well, we're just now being able to understand God's word.
No, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is that we're in an interim period of time where something may be true. And in Jesus's response there, just as this illustration, he specifically said, you are mistaken because you know neither scriptures nor the power of God. So he's rebuking the Sadducees, who were religious leaders of their day, they thought they were trying to trick Jesus. In fact, if you go up further into 22, they thought they were offering these questions to trick him. And instead, his answer is very much different than what they would have perceived his answer to be.
If what you're saying is true about Jesus and these particular scriptures, why is it that nobody has noticed it up until the 20th century? Because even nowadays in popular culture, you have people that are making arguments based on scripture as to why women should be subjected to their their husbands or their whoever, their fathers, their rule. Like, they should obey their husbands, they should obey their fathers, and the fathers, they have all the control over their daughters and their wives and everything like that. Just look at the Duggars and the Quiverful movement. I mean, the fathers are the ones that pick what?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I thought there was a little hesitation, so I apologize in my audio. So keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, they are scripturally based. They have a theology that definitely has the women being subjected to their husbands or their father's rule. And like, they don't have the option of saying no to their husbands. So how do you explain like your theology here with the vast divide in theologies that exist out there in Christendom? But not only that, these divides didn't even come up until later in the 20th century.
And I would say that because of the patriarchy of men in our society, it's been convenient for them to view the most extreme version of the scriptures that they think speak to their own
Does God
actions.
care about that? Is that
Oh,
concerning
he
to
does.
God?
Yeah,
Then why
it
doesn't he
is.
do
Yeah.
something about it? Why doesn't he
Well,
do
because I
something?
think, well, I think he will, and I think that's he will.
So
Basically,
hold on.
I
Wait a
mean,
second. Wait a second. I have to stop you real quick because you said, "Oh, I think that he will." If I stand
well, I know
by
I
and
feel
I
that he will.
watch, right? Well, hold on. So if I'm standing by and I am watching a man beat the living shit out of his wife and then proceed to rape her in front of me, and I just stand there watching, like, I'll help in a minute. What do you think of me?
In 400 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I spend 400 years watching men raping women, forcing them into marriages and all this other stuff. And I'm just standing by and I'm like, I'll help eventually. I'll stop this eventually. I mean, what would you think of me?
Well, I think that you'd be wrong to not intercede as the person that you are. I understand.
Okay. So
That's
is
a
God
You
wrong?
say God's wrong.
No, I would say that
Why
what
is
makes it different in God's, what makes it different in God's, God can undo the harm that that's been caused, or I say he's caused by not intervening in the moment. So I know this is getting kind of far afield of my initial call, but God has the ability. In fact, God says he'll wipe out every tear from their eye. Death will be no more. All these things, mourning or outcry, no
Well, what if
pain. All
she's
the
an
things, former
atheist?
things. What's that?
After she goes through all that, then she goes to hell. And God's what? Going to go down to hell and wipe all the tears out of her eyes?
Well, I don't believe in hell, and nor does the Bible teach
Oh,
hell.
okay.
But,
Okay.
yeah.
So there is no hell.
In fact, well, I think Bart Ehrman does a great job in his recent book describing how that theology came to be. But ultimately, the story in the Bible is one of redemption. Ultimately, it talks about a time and place in the future where these things are done away with. Not only that, but all the things will be corrected. Now, it may be all fairy tale. I get it. I understand that. But if we're judging on the merits of the Bible, of what it says, then we'd have to judge based upon everything it says. And so, in this book that we call the Bible, we'd have to say that there is a plan to rectify all that wrong.
Okay, and my question is, why doesn't God get off of his ass now and rectify and prevent the wrong? Again, going back to my example, I am the bad person for standing aside and watching horrible things happen. Yet if you see me doing that, I'm a horrible person. But you see God doing it, as your perspective goes, and you're perfectly fine. Like, I guess that's where it escapes me, that you're perfectly fine watching God watch other people suffer and die, be forced into marriages and all this other stuff. Have preachers twist God's so-called word in ways that subject women to the oppressive nature of men, and yet you're like, he'll fix it one day. And you're perfectly fine with him fixing it one day, instead of asking the question of, why don't you do something now?
Well, I'm trying to avoid the larger discussion on free will and what it takes to get there. But ultimately, to your point, there is a plan. The Bible talks about it. The Bible also talks about what he's going to do to fix it. Now, I suppose, let me offer this alternative explanation maybe, is if you're right, and if what's coming in the future isn't worth it, and a single person says, oh, this wasn't worth it, what I went through is not worth it, then I think you actually would have a point. Obviously, we can't test that theory out. I would
let me ask you. Let me ask you something real quick.
I'll share something personal, real quick. I've lost my second son in a horrible way. Okay, as a baby.
I'm so sorry.
I've gone through the worst. Yeah, I've gone through the worst thing a person can go through. Like there's nothing I wouldn't do or have done to me other than that. And so therefore, in some sense, I can say that the pain of the worst thing possibly happening to a person, the future of what's to come and being corrective in that way, I guess I do look forward to that. And I do hope, I don't know what that's like yet, but I would say that ultimately, if we are to believe everything in the Bible, it will be rectified. And so again, if we're judging the Bible based upon its own words, I think we have to take into account everything it says from the start to the finish. But anyhow, sorry.
John, does your God have all the omni characteristics?
I would say yes. I would say yes.
Okay. Is your God a creator God?
He is.
Okay. So before, let's just call this man A, that is misinterpreting the scripture and as a result is mistreating his wife. Before he even existed, God knew that if he created this man is going to do this, correct?
I guess and I'm now thinking what you meant by omni-God. I would say that I don't believe that he hands-on creates every single person, if that's what you're,
Okay.
if that's what you mean by omni-God.
Okay. So God doesn't create people. They just kind of, we create each other ourselves through procreation?
No, I would say that the person, no, I'd say he created creation so that it's self-perpetuating. I mean, by extension, you could say he created everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean he made every man's personality to be what it might be.
So you disagree with the Bible when it says that God knitted you in the womb?
No, I would say, I would say that's somewhat a poetic way to describe it.
It's a poetic way of describing God creating people individually. Or at least that's how pro-life people.
I don't believe God individually comes in. Yeah, I don't believe God comes in and creates individuals.
So God has no control over
for that, and that
God has no control over who gets born and how many people there are and how those people turn out.
Correct. I would say that's correct.
Okay, so your God is not omnipotent. He's not sovereign.
Well, there you go. Maybe I need to. Okay. I would say he's sovereign. He's sovereign in the sense that I don't think to be sovereign it would be a violation of that term to say he doesn't control every micro action.
Okay.
In
so
fact,
he's definitely not
the
omnipotent.
opposite. He's allowing a lot of things to just. Okay.
Why do you call this thing God?
Now I'm gonna after this call. After this call, I'll have to do more research on omnipotence. So.
Well, so omnipotence means that God knows. Well,
no, it's all powerful.
Right. Well, omnipotence is just God is all knowing. So like he knows the future. So like, omniscient. Sorry. I guess I don't know the definitions of these things.
Well, I thought I knew the definition, but I'm going to go look for specifically I'll have to research specifically what, as it relates to. I don't think he puts every little thing in place. I think he's projected that into the world to become this way, but I think he sits back and looks and sees. Call it Schrodinger's cat. he's the observer. So.
Okay, so before we let you go, and I know that you were trying not to get into this discussion, but I'm just kind of curious, what specifically convinces you of God's existence? Like, what keeps you a believer?
It would definitely be what keeps me a believer. To begin with, I would say it unfortunately goes into the metaphysics of it, as it relates to, because I took a big chunk of my life off of actively searching for God or researching. I mean, I was raised as a Christian. Then I went to school, got my degree, followed my career, and then came back around much later because I had a general feeling or relationship with him. And I'm not going to say I had Holy Spirit. I didn't speak in tongues. But there was something that touched me earlier in life that I came back around to. And yeah, that would be the why.
Okay.
I will say
right.
this though, listening to your guys' show earlier, I do believe that Romans 1:20 is valid, but that's just my.
I mean, that's not how invisibility works, but okay.
Do you think
the invisible
Christianity has
qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation.
Do you think Christianity has ever sprung up anywhere in the world without having been preached there?
No.
Okay,
I mean,
if
I guess
these
if I was
invisible
Mormon, I might
qualities
believe
are
that,
so
but no, I'm
clearly
not Mormon.
seen, then why has that never happened?
I don't think it's pertaining to Christianity in that scripture. I think that would be a general scripture, which is probably one of the reasons why, to the core, most civilizations have the belief in a deity or a God, is because they're trying to
Is
put
a
an answer
belief
to
in
that.
is simply having a belief in a deity or God sufficient to bring one to salvation?
It is, in fact, if you go to Romans chapter 2, the next chapter over, it talks about
The
people
demons
are
believe.
accused or excused based upon. No, but the demons are different. They already fell from a position they couldn't fall from. They don't have that same criteria. So,
But they believe. If all that is
Romans 2.
necessary is that you believe that God exists, then the demons should be saved too.
No, I'm not saying that it's belief in God existing. I'm saying, in fact, that's that scripture here, when the very ones who demonstrate the matter of the law to be written in their own hearts, while their conscience is bearing witness to them, and by their own thoughts they are being accused or even excused. And so the idea is, to your point, is if people believed in some deity and they really believed it, their belief would excuse or accuse them based upon assessment of that person.
My own thoughts excuse me. My own thoughts tell me that there is no God, and I have no reason to think there is a God. And my thoughts do not accuse me of being wrong on that point. So, therefore, my thoughts are valid.
And therefore, your thoughts you'd be excused if that's true. And I have no reason. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
So maybe you can explain to me, John, where I'm wrong in this, because I've been toying with this idea for a while. But so would it be accurate to say that in your view of Christianity, or what you believe Christianity teaches, is that you just got to believe in Jesus and God, and that's how you get into heaven, right? Like, belief in God and Jesus is all that's required?
No, I don't believe that. I believe that James talks very much about works, but I'm not
okay.
Yeah, I don't believe in Jesus and God. That's the only thing. Therefore,
okay.
but I will
Sorry, I guess I was confused earlier.
Unbelief. Okay.
No, sorry. What you said earlier kind of led me down my own thought path of believing that you thought that it was belief only that got you like saved and into heaven, not that works was also a component of that. So, I mean, if you have works that was a component of that, then I guess I understand that.
Yeah, but it doesn't invalidate what I just said about Romans 2. Like, in some weird sense, not knowing God or Jesus would probably be better for a person in some sense. Not saying that knowing them incorrectly also wouldn't be okay. It's just everybody's going to be judged based on the secret things of their heart. That's what Paul makes clear.
Oh, now you said there is no hell. So does everyone go to heaven then?
That I'm not, I don't have a real strong feeling about that answer. I mean, certainly the Bible says that people are going to heaven. There's some discussion about earth, but I couldn't quantify that.
So I guess I'm just kind of curious. Oh, go ahead, Godless Gurney.
I was just saying, what's the purpose of judgment then? I mean, what are people, judge and you're good and you're not good, but okay, now you all go to heaven. What was the purpose of the judgment? Just to pat some people on the back?
Boy, it's going to get really deep really quickly. Revelation talks about a second death. Talks about, I would say there's a period of time where there's going to be a resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. You basically, to some degree, you can get through the first resurrection being unrighteous, but you won't be able to get through the second death, essentially. So then Revelation talks about that. I'm sure you're aware. I can tell you know the Bible pretty well.
I do,
Right.
but your interpretation is a little different than what I'm used to. So I'm guessing maybe what you mean is that after that judgment, those who are not deemed worthy of heaven, they go through the second death and they go to annihilation?
No, I would say that let me rephrase it. Maybe you did say that, but I wasn't quite following. I would say there'd be this resurrection of both the righteous and unrighteous. The righteous would have been tested. The unrighteous people, like we just mentioned, I would say in Romans 2, that were judged based on their hearts, not based upon anything they did particularly well, would have another chance, and then they would be tested again, and then there would be a completion to death. And then that's 1 Corinthians 15, I think it starts in 25, kind of goes over that a bit. And then that ties in with Revelation 20 or 21, where it talks about some of the details.
Okay. Well, I'm a little thoroughly confused by your theology and how it all fits together, but I appreciate the call there, John.
He's not too far off
Absolutely.
from the position I pivoted to when I discovered the divine hiddenness problem. It's kind of a form of universalism.
Okay. It was kind of like a light switch for me. Right. Like I went from believing in God and being like full on Christian to like, well, I don't believe in that God. Which one do I believe in? I don't believe in any of them. So it was kind of like, I just went right out of it. But anyways, really appreciate your call there, John. And I hope that you'll call back again in the future.
I will. Thank you guys very much. Have a good day. Okay.
All right. You do the same.
All right. See ya.
Bye. All right. Well, that was a great theist call. So glad that we were able to get somebody on. Just to let everybody know that if you want to support the show here, you can by going to patreon.com/call the line. Crap. I'm just now realizing that I'm not exactly sure if that's the Patreon.
I think you're right.
I think that it's called, patreon.com/call the line. If you want to help support the show here, that's going to be the best way that you can help support us. I know personally on my channel, I've taken a really big monetization hit. I don't know if it's because of the shorts eating up a whole lot of money or whatnot, but videos all around are just not making that much money nowadays. So patreon.com/call the line is the best way to support us here. You can also become a member. That'll help too here on the channel, or send a super chat. We're going to be going over all super chats that are over $5. So if you want to interact with us, but you don't want to call in, that's the best way to do it. But we do want you to call in, especially if you're a theist and you have a problem with anything that we talked about. Like before, when I thought that John was saying that belief is the only thing that's required to get into heaven in order to be accepted by God, I was going to ask him if if like that means that your works matter or don't matter at all. So like, that means like the moral argument is not an argument for God. Like it just falls flat on its face for me, because under some understandings of Christianity, you don't need to be a good person to get into heaven. You just got to believe in Jesus. There's several theological ways to get around that, but I was going to ask him about that particular aspect of it. But yes, so definitely go and help us over there on Patreon, and call in. The number is 720-619-2288. You can call in or hit that link down below in the description, and you can call in over the web. All right, let's see. We got two atheists on the line now. I think we're gonna go to Big Zebra first. What's up there, Big Zebra?
Hi, Godless Engineer and Granny. Can you hear me
Hello.
okay?
Yes.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, that's good. You were talking very early on in the show about women being owned by men. I hope you don't mind revisiting that.
No, I mean, yeah, that's one of the top topics that we were discussing, so definitely.
Oh, okay, good. Well, first, I'd like to point out that Malcolm the Horseshoe Crab has made it so that it's hard to tell male and female horseshoe crabs apart. And so they tend not to have sexism unless you flip them over. And even then, it's hard to tell males and females apart. You have to really know what you're doing. But Godless Granny may not be familiar with Malcolm the Horseshoe Crab. So
No, I am
I'll
not.
go. No, well, it's too long a story, and I don't want to bore you with that. So I'd much rather bore you with the Bible instead. And the thing is that this business about women being owned by men, there's an interesting part. I think it's in Deuteronomy, and often when you take a significant passage in the Bible, it seems that the context is much more interesting when you look what comes immediately before. And so we're all familiar with this business about if a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, you are to take the girl to her father's doorstep and stone her to death. But if you look a little bit before, let's see, where is it now? Oh, shoot. Now I lost it. But the point is that if a man claims that his wife wasn't a virgin, it turns out that the way to disprove that is to have evidence. And so the mother and father of the bride are supposed to somehow storm into the family house after the wedding night and take the sheet where the wedding was consummated and keep it as evidence that the bride was a virgin on her wedding night. And it's the only way to save your daughter's life, apparently. If the husband gets bored so if the husband says, I'm not really into this marriage anymore, so I'll just say she wasn't a virgin. And I realized that taking the wife to her father's doorstep is not only is the woman owned by the man, she's really a product, and the husband is returning the wife as defective. And I found that really gross. And I seem to remember that there was some sort of bit in these early days of Judaism that when the marriage was consummated, the sheet was supposed to be put on display, but I can't find that anywhere. So I leave it open to you guys if you've ever heard of that.
I have seen that in movies, and so I'm not sure whether I've ever seen that in the Bible or if I'm only remembering it from media.
Maybe
And
it could be in commentaries, maybe.
that
Not
could
the
be.
Bible
It
as
could be.
such, but I can't remember what it's called now. It's not the Tanakh. It's the book of commentaries by rabbis. Is called something else. My brain is failing me. And there's
let's see. If I can interrupt, I believe it's Deuteronomy 22:15-17, maybe. Then the father of the young woman and her mother shall take and bring out the evidence of her virginity to the elders of the city gate, and the father and woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man to marry, and he hates her. And behold, he has accused her of misconduct, saying, I did not find in your daughter evidence of virginity, and yet this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloak before the elders and be like, see, look, hymen blood. It's there.
Yeah, and I'm not
Don't
sure
kill
how
her.
the hell. They're supposed to somehow get this sheet and keep it for forever and a day.
Well, obviously. So here's everybody close your eyes and imagine this, okay? They get done consummating the marriage, and then all of a sudden the father kicks down the door and is like, get off the bed, and rips the sheet off the bed, and is like, this is so you don't kill her.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more like the mother comes and gets it in the morning, because that's part of the woman's duties, is to take care of the home after the couple has left the room and come down for breakfast.
In my mind, it's a lot funnier to think of the father being like kicking down the door after having listened to his daughter have sex for the first time. Give it to me.
I remember
it sounds so sophisticated when you say it like that.
I remember a movie, and I think it was Yentl, where this woman is pretending to be a man because she wants to study the scriptures, and the parents force them into a marriage, and it's two women in the marriage, and so one of the women cuts her arm and bleeds onto the sheet, so there's evidence of the consummation in the morning.
Jesus. Oh,
I mean, there would be no way to determine.
That's also known as the Streisand effect. Okay, that was bad. That's not what the Streisand effect is about, but
no.
I got confused initially there.
Yes, that was really left brain thinking on my part, or is it right brain thinking? But a creative connection. But as far as humor goes, I don't think it worked very well. But I tried. I think that's the important thing. There's another thing with Lot, where the people of the town, is it Gomorrah or Sodom? They want Sodom, okay, and they want at the angels, and he offers his daughters, who have never slept with a man, and then again, instead of he offers them as prized objects, not people, and he says that he has to protect these angels, or whatever they're called, because they're under the protection of his house, but his daughters aren't. It's just astonishing.
Can you imagine how awkward the rest of that night was? Like, after the crowd goes away and everything like that, and like, the daughters are like looking at their father like, you just about gave us to them to rape to death? Like, I don't even know how you continue with your night.
And then the rest of the story is, after they escape the city, the girls think that there are no more men alive, so they get their father drunk and both impregnate themselves with their father. Is that even possible? Yes. If a man is passed out drunk, is he capable of performing?
I mean, I've heard whiskey dick is a hell of a thing, so.
It depends. If the man is me, but actually, that's really disgusting. The Bible
Yeah.
is filled with so many disgusting things that it's appalling. But anyway, I did a search on Bible Gateway for the word daughter, and almost all of the references I found were with sons. So and so lived so many years and had many other sons and daughters. And daughters
Uh,
are basically a throwaway, which is demonstrated in these various stories we have about how women are treated. It's really weird.
Most women in the Bible don't even get a name.
Oh, right. Yeah. Did Noah's wife even get a name?
Nope. And one of the
No.
other ones that I was, commenting on in a video I made recently was, okay, I was responding to someone who made the claim that Eve is actually a clone of Adam, which would make Eve male, which would mean the first woman in the Bible would have been Cain's wife.
Transgender. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, yeah, either Eve was transgender or Eve was just straight up male, and somehow this male managed to have some babies. But that would make the first female Cain's wife, who didn't even have a name.
And
so,
when sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, for anybody, for especially you, big zebra, but also anybody in the chat, I put a link in the chat for the Skeptics Annotated Bible. They have categories where it lists all of the things that are said about a particular category, and they have a women category in there, so you can go and you can look at all of the horrible shit that the Bible says about women, both New and Old Testament. So, I mean, if you feel like subjecting yourself to that, or you need to quickly find a verse, that could be a pretty good resource for anybody.
There's also that weird thing in the New Testament where a woman who is praised by Jesus, "Woman, you have great faith," is actually earlier compared to a dog by compared to a dog. And when we're thinking of dogs in this era, we're thinking of street dogs. And so Jesus compares her to a flea-ridden cur.
Yeah.
Which is kind of horrifying. But anyway, sorry, I think
Hey, can
I've
I
used
ask
up
you a
my
question,
ability.
Big Zebra?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Frequently when I'm talking about slavery in the Bible, I bring up the fact that the Bible says it's okay to buy slaves as long as you get them from a foreign country. And so I always ask, are there any Canadians who are willing to come here and be sold as slaves?
Well, the thing is, we never had a need to when America would import their slaves to us through the Underground Railroad. So we had all the slaves. Sorry, that's really disgusting. We did have slaves in Canada for a while, and I think it was in 1789 that the British Empire started canceling slavery. But that business from foreign country, I guess that means we could send slaves over each other's borders then. Maybe if we could get Americans to... Sorry?
I was just going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I guess from a very technical perspective on this, if you were to go the Christian nationalist Gilead route, you would be able to purchase Canadians as slaves here, but you wouldn't be able to force, I guess in this particular respect, you wouldn't be able to force a Christian in Gilead to be a slave. You would only be able to purchase. Yeah, that, I mean, to try to translate it, from Old Testament sort of context to like a more modern context, I think that's what would have to be there.
That is interesting. Maybe what we could do, if you've ever seen those ads for Canadian tourism in the US, you see Canada, the word Canada with a little Canadian flag on the stem of the D. we could offer really low prices for Americans to come to Canada on holiday and then capture them as slaves and auction them off. and,
That sounds like a really good idea.
Sure, well, it's a lot of people want to return to the traditions of the past, and there used to be slavery in America. So, sorry, this is really off topic. I'm not sure if I even answered your question, Godless Granny.
Oh, yes, you did. I was just joking anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting a little tired, so I was going to sign off.
Okay.
We've got a couple of theists on the line, so that works out for us.
Well, let's get to them. I'm just a filler anyway.
Yeah.
So
all right, Big Zebra. I hope you have a great night.
To you both. Same to you too. Bye for now.
All right. Bye. All right. So we are going to be heading to a theist caller next, which I'm glad that we were able to get some theists to call in. Just a reminder to go to the patreon.com/call the line if you want to help support us here. And really appreciate any super chats that come through. We will be addressing any that are $5 or more. So definitely send in those super chats so that we can interact with y'all as the audience. And if you're ready for it, Godless Granny, I'll just hit up the next caller.
Go for it.
Okay, so looks like we're talking to Mr. British's son. I don't know what that means, but hi, Mr. British's son.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Yes.
I'm interested in talking to Godless Granny very much so.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask the question that was written. Why is your question of evidence in proving God riddled with a fallacious burden of proof?
Could you explain how what the burden of proof, like how is it fallacious? Like what are you talking about?
That's a very good question. So, Godless Granny, what kind of evidence would convince you?
No, that's not the question I asked.
Yeah, but I'll answer his question anyway.
Okay.
If there really is an omniscient God, this omniscient God would know exactly what I need to convince me. And this omniscient God, and if this God is omnipotent, this God would be able to provide me with this evidence. And so my answer to that is whatever is sufficient to overcome my doubts. And omniscient God would know and be able to do that.
Okay. Do you like reading books, Godless Granny?
Yes.
And what books have you read of the main religions in the world that have discouraged you or haven't provided enough evidence that a God exists?
You want me to start listing all of the Christian books that I've read? Is that what you're asking me to do?
He's all religions, apparently.
Okay, I would say, first of all, I know primarily about Christianity. I know a little bit about Islam, and I know virtually nothing about any other religions. I know a little bit about Judaism, but virtually nothing about any other religions.
Well, I think the answer to your question would be in reading the Quran. If you read the book cover to cover and then say, okay, and then formulate an opinion, then fair enough, But have you read the Quran?
I've read some of it, yes.
But you haven't read all of it?
No, I have not read all of it.
So I would invite you to read the Quran with
Why?
it's just like any other book, because that contains the evidence which you're seeking.
Well, no. So here's the thing. On my view, I know that you're talking to Godless Granny here, but from my view, these are the claims to a God. So those things can't be used to prove that a God exists, because they are the ones claiming these particular attributes of a God. No, I'm still talking. I mean, you can't use the things that's claiming.
What's your name, sir?
I will mute you. You can't use the books that are claiming that the God exists to prove that the God exists. If God does exist, like Godless Granny started off with, God should know what evidence would convince her. And since he doesn't seem to be all that willing to provide said evidence to prove to Godless Granny that he exists, why should anybody believe? What evidence outside of the claims of these deities exists to prove that any of these deities exist?
No, I'm sorry, you've probably misunderstood me, because I asked Godless Granny a series of questions. She firstly responded by an omniscient and an omnipotent God would know. So I asked, what is the specific evidence that she said, God will know. So she hadn't expanded on that. And I'm saying, my claim, I have evidence to give to Godless Granny, and that's when I asked her, did she read? She's only familiar with Christian scriptures, and she has admitted that she hasn't read the Quran from cover to cover. So are you
a Muslim?
Let me ask you a question, Mr. British.
It doesn't matter if I'm a Muslim.
Mr. British, are you God? Are you God?
No, I'm Mr. British's son. Please don't confuse us with that.
If there is a God that cares about what I believe, why is it you that is on the line and not this God that wants me to believe?
Well, look, you, by your own admission, have said that you're only familiar with Christian scriptures, and it can be confusing. You need to read the Quran. If you don't want to read it, that's fine.
The portions of the Quran that I did read, I found far more confusing than the Bible. And that was the whole reason that I quit reading it, is I had no idea what it was trying to say. It was completely confusing.
Yeah, but it's like me reading reading about Newtonian physics and picking out random pages and not appreciating.
I didn't pick out random pages. I started at the beginning. Why are you accusing me of doing something when you weren't there?
So how much have you read, Godless Granny? Let's be specific.
No, why does this matter? Like, this has no bearing whatsoever on what she actually said. You're just trying to control the conversation here. And I mean, it's really quite pathetic. No, you are, because you're not actually listening to what she is saying. She is saying that God should know what will convince her, and that God should be able to provide that evidence to convince her that he exists. It shouldn't be meticulously put down in some book that was written in the 700 8th to 9th century. Like, she shouldn't have to decipher it through a different language in order to understand that this God exists. Right? Like, what she's saying is that this God should provide the evidence of his existence. And since he doesn't, there seems to be no reason to believe in any God existing.
There's two things that you said that don't agree with each other. She's saying that she wants God to give the evidence. That's number one. Okay.
No, I'm saying
we're very clear.
He exists,
please don't interrupt me. Please don't interrupt me.
No. That's not how this is going to work. Okay, you're muted.
Because you're not going to tell me. I'm interrupting because you're misrepresenting me.
Yeah, go ahead and reiterate what you're saying there, Godless Granny.
I'm saying, if there is a God that cares about what I believe, then this God should be telling me what he believes. I'm sorry, what he wants me to believe.
Right. All right. I'm going to unmute you now. And just recall, we are hosting the show, not you.
Hello. I accept that you're hosting the. I accept that you're hosting the show. I don't want to come across.
Right. So don't tell us to shut up. Okay. So just.
I'm not telling you to shut up. I was just I was in the middle of talking. I just expected some, polite discourse. In any case, the godless granny has essentially said that God should provide the evidence, right? Of
if he
God
wants me to know him.
And
if he doesn't care, then no, he has no such responsibility.
So this is why I've asked the question. My initial question was, why is your question of evidence riddled with a fallacious burden of proof? If God knows.
So let me clarify something here.
If you please let me finish.
As we're saying, we don't believe in a God because there's a lack of evidence to prove that a God exists. If you believe that a God does exist, then you provide the evidence for that. You have a specific claim about a God. If you can't provide the evidence, then there's no reason why we should believe in whatever cookie cutter kind of God you have.
It's really interesting what Godless Granny has said, because Godless Granny, and I don't want to mischaracterize and misrepresent what she said. As far as I understand, she has said that if God is omniscient and omnipotent, God will know how to communicate or how to provide the evidence. Can Godless Granny at least tell us openly, yep, God knows what it will take to convince Godless Granny, but what will it take? Can you explain to us, Godless Granny, what burden of proof will it take for you to believe in God? As in, do you want God to talk to you directly? Do you want God to appear in front of you? I understand that, I understand your first statement. You said God knows, but can you expand and elucidate upon the burden of proof that has to be, the threshold that has to be passed?
The threshold that has to be passed is that this God needs to demonstrate that he wants me to know him and that he's able to communicate that to me.
Okay, so that's really good, because you said 2 points. You've said God needs to demonstrate and God needs to communicate directly. Do you want him to communicate directly or indirectly? Which one?
It doesn't matter.
Which one is your preference?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so indirect. Well, the response to the second part of your request is, I'm calling on the show to you to say that the evidence is the Quran. Please read it.
Okay, are you God?
I'm not God. That's
then
why
God is not demonstrating that he wants me to read the Quran. You are the one that is making the claim that I should read the Quran. No God has communicated to me that he wants me to read the Quran.
But did I ask you about communication? Did you prefer it direct or indirect? You said indirect.
Okay, are you speaking on behalf of God? Are you speaking on behalf of God?
I am speaking about a message that was revealed to a messenger of God.
Okay,
That's
and
indirect.
Are you speaking on behalf of that God?
I've already clarified that answer. I said I am conveying a message that was revealed to a messenger of God.
Okay, but it wasn't revealed to you, and you're not the messenger. And so I still have no message that came even indirectly from God. I'm getting a message from you, and you're not God, and you're not God's messenger.
Well, no. So help me discern something here, Mr. British's son. Help me discern something. How can we discern between God prompting you to communicate this to us and somebody that just got a hair up their ass and felt like telling somebody to read this book? Like, and more to the point, how can we discern between God actually, hold on. And more to the point, how can we discern between God revealing himself to some fuck in the 8th century? How can we discern that from some guy hallucinating or just coming up with a shitty story and writing it down and saying that it came from God? How can we actually know that these things come from an actual creator?
With all respect, sir, I'm only going to address Godless Granny because I asked her specific questions, and she.
All right, my response is that I'm asking you to respond to Godless Engineer's question, because I have the same question. If I'm supposed to go read the Quran, why am I supposed to think that this is a message from God?
Why? After you have read the book, then at least you can formulate an opinion. Isn't that right?
No, we're going around in circles. Are you okay if I drop him?
Sure, go ahead.
Why are you offended I haven't spoken to you?
Because fuck you. That's the reason why. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I feel like if you're going to come onto the show and be like, I'm only going to address one of you and that's it, and like act like you're all high and mighty, like, I don't know. I feel like fuck you. And then on the other hand, we were just going around in circles, and a lot of people in the chat were saying that he was just a troll. So I don't think that he was actually talking to us in like real.
You don't have a legitimate question,
right? So I know that you were interacting with him, but I think that he was just gonna jerk us around for another 15 minutes, and we've got a couple other callers on the line. So, anyways,
might have decent questions.
Yeah, exactly. But in any case, as far as like the evidence goes and everything like that, I feel like it still bears repeating that we need to be able to determine that an actual God revealed this message as opposed to just somebody making it up. And I feel like a lot of people, a lot of apologists and theists, they just have emotions to appeal to on the, like, you just know that it's, or the emotional effect that it has on you proves that it's true, kind of thing. So, if you're ready, we can move on to the next call.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So next up is Andrew from Florida, which I think I may have spoken to Andrew before on the line. Hey there.
Hello. Yeah,
hello, Andrew.
Hey.
My condolences for living in Florida.
Yep, same.
What?
Condolences for living in Florida.
Oh, Florida's amazing. It's beautiful. You guys should come and visit.
I've been there. The weather is fantastic. The governor is, let's see, what's a word that means you can't stay? He's someone that you just can't stand.
Insufferable.
I voted for him.
There we go. Insufferable.
Please don't tell me that, Andrew. Okay, let's just get to your question. He voted for DeSantis twice.
Oh. What's your question, Andrew?
Question?
Yeah, what's your question?
Oh, no, it's a suggestion.
Okay, what's your suggestion?
Okay.
Yeah. I know we've been hurt by religion, and me too, but whether there is a God or not, we just have to accept that religion is a fundamental component of the human experience. So we should heal and forgive our trauma and just work to reform religion, because it's who we are.
Why do we need, like, I guess I'm failing to recognize the need for religion. Also, the assumption that we've been through some kind of trauma. I haven't been through a trauma personally, You know, I'm not gonna speak for Godless Granny. I know she's mentioned some things on the show tonight, but I know I haven't been through religious trauma in that way, but I know plenty of people that have. But regardless of religious trauma, I don't see the need for religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if religion wasn't such a fundamental component of who we are, why has it lasted so long? And why do billions of people still practice it? It's because it scratches a psychological itch that we all have. It helps us in our humanity.
I disagree. I think what happened is that at the dawn of civilization, people had questions that they could not answer. And so they made up gods to explain the things that they were unable to explain. And as we are coming to understand our universe so much better, we're coming to realize that all these things that we used to think were gods aren't gods after all. You know, people used to think that lightning came from gods, and now we know that lightning is a natural phenomenon. When electricity, you know, escapes from the clouds and comes down to the earth. People used to think that gods controlled the rain, and now we know that it's weather patterns. And the more we discover of the universe, the less we need of gods, because gods were just a way of explaining those things that we didn't understand.
Also, if you have a strange itch, I would suggest going and get tested and then get an ointment.
LOL.
Cortisone works well.
Yeah.
What was that?
Or get a shot of penicillin. That might help. I don't know. But as far as like everybody having that need for religion, not everybody has that need for a religion, and it's a pretty diverse, you know, spectrum in humanity as far as what we need. I mean, me personally, as soon as I realized, is there any way that you can get away from, like, I don't know, the gym or wherever you're at? Because like we got a lot of feedback coming through. It's a little hard to talk.
Oh, sorry, that's not possible. You're gonna have to mute me when you guys talk. I can't really change.
Okay.
This.
Okay. Well, there.
I think
so. I've got him muted.
Yeah, if you want to mute, that's fine. But also, I'm not opposed to you guys just hanging up on him and answering the question, because that's so obnoxious and rude to just expect that we'll just handle that for him.
Yeah, you know, you got a good point there, Arden. I think Andrew, I feel like you're not actually having a conversation in good faith. So I think I'm going to go ahead and drop you, and we'll just discuss the topic that you introduced. So as far as religion being necessary, I feel like that there are plenty of better mechanisms for either healing trauma or dealing with daily life or things that you encounter in your life than the need for religion. I don't actually think that you need religion for anything. I think religion has been, like, still holds fast to a lot of people because it's just an easy thing to believe. So, I mean, I think that that's the reason why, you know.
I do think that is one of the weaknesses of the atheist community right now, and something that we are working on building. And that is that right now, religion kind of has a corner on the three biggest life events: birth, marriage, and death. Most of those things, you know, when a new baby is born, your church congregation comes and starts bringing in meals. That's something we don't have in the atheist community. When people get married, they usually do it in a church, because that's a common place that they already have and they know of, and you know, all their friends are there. And death, you know, again, the church community will come together to console and be with the person who has died. And that's something we need to work on in the atheist community. And I think there's a real need for secular chaplains. Some of you might know this. John obviously does, but I have asked John to do my funeral when I die, because I want a secular funeral, and I know that John can do that. And that's something that we need in our atheist community, is a way to handle these major life events with support for each other.
Yeah, and there's a lot of groups out there that atheists can connect with and everything like that. Luckily, both Godless Granny and I live in kind of the same area in North Alabama, and so we're able to lean on each other in that kind of way. But a lot of people, living in other areas, I would just seek out secular groups or stick around secular people in your area and everything like that. And I think that there are plenty of ways to deal with the complexities of life that do not require believing in a magical wizard that apparently controls everything. Like, I feel like you don't have to believe that in order to heal from trauma or to, I guess, deal with daily life in general. I think it's ridiculous to suggest that we need religion or that somehow people believing in religion necessitates that religion is true in some kind of way. All right. We've got another theist calling in, Jackie. And I believe Jackie wants to make a case for accepting religion. I'm down for it.
Hello?
Hello, Jackie.
So yeah, I was just going to make sure because I'm pretty sure there's a time delay on the call if I have that correct.
Yes, there is.
But basically, I guess so. Are you guys familiar with Dr. Jordan Peterson?
Yes.
So one of the things Dr. Jordan Peterson has. What was that?
I said, "Oh my God." Okay. So yes, please.
Dr. Jordan Peterson is a psychologist from Canada, and he has given lectures about religious ethics and philosophy. And I suppose the summary of his approach is that there are truths in the human experience which are part of our subconscious psyche, and you can say God is the moral force that all human beings, in some subconscious sense, strive towards. And the biblical stories, in a sense, represent, using Jungian terms, the archetypes that individuals strive to. And the biblical stories reflect aspects of truth, right? They're not literally true. That would actually be an understatement. They are there's like a meta truth there. And if that's the case, then what's wrong with accepting religion if it reflects meta truth?
He thinks that it's more true than what real things that exist in reality is what that means.
I was just wanting him to give his definition. Yeah, okay.
Am I wrong? Isn't that what you mean, Jackie?
I mean, God is your conscious. What else is there? What else can you describe your conscious other than God signaling to you, how to make a better world? Like Jordan Peterson talks about something like Cain and Abel, right? That reflects the truth of the human condition of jealousy and
that presumes that a God exists.
And the dragon of order, in a sense, is God's manifestation.
You have a presumption that God exists in the first place, and he manifests through what Jordan Peterson calls our deepest instinct, or our inner, I guess, how did you describe it? Inner psyche? I don't know. What kind of word salad did you use to describe it?
The subconscious, or the Jungian archetypes, right? Our collective unconscious rings of the metatruths of God's reflection, right? Don't wrestle with monsters lest you become a monster. Don't wrestle with the devil lest you become the devil.
Did you have to write this bullshit down in order to repeat it? I'm just kind of curious.
No, the word Israel, the word for the Jewish people, Israel, is we who wrestle with God in the Bible. So in a sense, everyone wrestles with God, and the Jews who introduced religion wrestled with God.
No. In the Bible, Jacob literally wrestled with God, had his dick grabbed by God, and then got renamed. Kind of like what happens in prison on occasion.
That in a sense reflects the meta truth of the human condition in trying to achieve a connection with God. Have you?
Do you think God lives inside? Jackie, do you think God lives inside everyone within their subconscious?
I believe God manifests his truth when human beings observe the laws around them and of human nature. And we know heaven.
Okay, so if an atheist is If an atheist is doing good things, does that mean that this atheist is manifesting God?
They may think they're an atheist, but if they're working towards a higher goal, they're perpetrating God's will into the world.
I feel like that there's a lot of presumption about this. So you've just ambiguously defined what God is, and now you're claiming some metaphysical shit is an expression of God without actually proving any of this shit is actually real.
Have you even listened to Jordan Peterson's Bible lectures?
Oh my God, I've listened to Jordan Peterson, and I have to sit there and listen to it 2 or 3 times in order to understand the fucking word garbage that comes out of his mouth.
Jordan Peterson lost all credibility when he said that as a therapist, he is unable to use a person's correct pronouns because that was, I forget what kind of violation to him. But if he is unable as a therapist to use a person's correct pronouns, then he has no business being a therapist.
Well, that's the sort of minus thing is he's fighting the woke mob in Canada who are trying to mandate some sort of fourth.
The woke mob in Canada. The woke mob being the mob that's like, hey, can you just be respectful to other people and use their pronoun, their preferred pronouns? Can you do that? And he's like, the woke mob, oh no.
If a therapist is unable to be respectful of their patient, then he's got no business being a therapist.
But I have not heard an atheist convincingly argue against Jordan Peterson's point about how God manifests in people's lives. I haven't heard.
I mean, I just did. There's no evidence to suggest that anything that you said is actually real in reality. And I get that you have this whole Platonic form kind of idea and how your Platonic forms are more real than real shit that exists in reality. I get that. I understand his philosophy. It's still all speculative bullshit, and it's word salad dressed up to make it sound all fanciful and sophisticated, but really it's Jordan Peterson saying, well, I believe in magic. Do you believe in magic? Oh, you don't believe in magic? Oh, well, you can think, right? Well, that's magic, manifest in reality.
No, but what is more real than the conditions described in the Bible?
What's more real than what conditions?
There's a lot of things in the Bibles that are just flat out wrong.
For example, in the story of the fall of when Adam and Eve ate the serpent, that was an example where human beings were expressing the meta
ate the serpent?
Ate the serpent? Are you saying that Eve deep-throated the serpent?
No, I said the story in Adam and Eve where the serpent tempted them and they ate from the apple, that's the meta-truth that human beings experience in reality.
Yes, many women have been by the one-eyed snake. That's true.
Yeah, when you try and chase after utopia, which is what Eve was trying to do when eating from the fruit of knowledge, when you chase after utopia, you get a lot
Where does it say that in the Bible that she was chasing after utopia? I just thought that the snake made a convincing argument that she wasn't going to die if she ate the fruit, and she didn't die. So, that's not chasing utopia.
What else is closer to utopia than immortality?
Well, I mean, I feel like she was just hungry.
Right, Alexander
Solzhenitsyn. I mean, I don't think that I'm chasing utopia when I get a burrito.
No, but that doesn't give him. You're misunderstanding the meta truth that is expressed in the Bible.
Jackie, I've heard at least 50 different meta truths that are different interpretations of this story, and I've heard all kinds of different religions go in different directions as to what this story is supposed to mean. What makes you think that your meta-truth is better than somebody else's meta-truth when you're both deriving your meta-truths from the same story?
What other book has had a greater impact globally and in Western thought than the Bible?
I'm not asking about a different book. I'm asking why your truth that you take from this book is better than somebody else's truth who's taking their truth from the same book.
If you're going to let me speak, you're going to let me speak, but don't interrupt me, please. So in right, in it to try to get more.
No, that was totally fucking rude as shit. Okay, listen, I've muted you, Jackie. I get it. We're trying to have a conversation, and it's a little difficult over this, but we are in control of the show. If we need to interject something, we will. All right. So just keep that in mind. And I'm gonna unmute you, and I'm gonna let you come back on and finish explaining your meta truth bullshit. Okay. There you go.
The meta truth that I see manifest in reality that the Bible presents in, for example, the story of Cain and Abel is how envy, which is what Cain had for Abel before he killed him, basically leads to suffering, and that envy leads to suffering in the form of a murder, or trying to chase utopia by eating from the fruit of immortality. Well, you saw that in Stalinist Russia, where they were trying to get a Marxist utopia, but it turned out to kill a lot of people. So, you know, these are all archetypes that the Bible and moral lessons that the Bible is teaching people that has manifested and proven itself in reality. These are meta truths that the human condition experiences, and God is like the I used to say like a dragon of order, trying to create the laws in which human beings inhabit in a good environment, and trying to get order in a world of chaos requires connecting to something deeper than you. That deeper thing can manifest itself in a lot of very powerful ways. And there have been studies like when people take psychedelics, they see images of things higher than them, and if they're religious, studies show they actually break drug addiction more often, for example. And
okay, I'm sorry,
Okay,
but in
now
order
answer
to
the
take this
question.
argument seriously, in order for me to take this seriously, I really need to hear it in a Kermit the Frog voice. Is there any way that you can oblige us with a Kermit the Frog voice?
I mean, I can't really do a Muppet voice. Not really.
Why
I
don't
can't
you
really
just
do
answer
Darn,
my
I was
question?
Answer what question? I just gave you why those are true. Those are meta truths.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
you
you gave me
ambiguously
your
defined
meta-truth.
God.
And I've heard at least 50 other meta-truths about the same scripture passage. So why should I believe your meta-truth and not somebody else's meta-truth when both of you are taking your meta-truths from the same passage?
Well, have those meta truths not reflected the human condition accurately?
Sure, they've reflected the human condition accurately.
So then they're true.
Sorry, my wife is wondering, are you on bath salts there, Jackie?
No.
Serious question. Okay, good.
Why would
Just
you
had to
assume
make
I'm
sure.
on bath salt?
I mean, you're speaking particularly crazy. I mean, you're ambiguously defining God into this realm of obscurity where God is literally anything. You're taking general thematic ideas from old ass stories and proclaiming that they are representations of things that God wants us to know, or God has somehow extracted this essence from the waters of chaos or something.
That I've heard similarly from Jordan Peterson.
Right, you're reading off of a script from Jordan Peterson.
I'm not even
Is
legally
Jordan
allowed
Peterson
to take
God?
drugs. No.
Okay, so why should we care what Jordan Peterson says?
But I'm saying it's not like I came up with these. I'm saying these came from a very smart man who has looked at the human condition. Who has. Well, I'm saying what I'm saying is these are manifestations in reality. Like, I don't see how you can't understand the idea.
I can't understand why you're not eating my fucking word salad with ranch. Okay, so I can't wrap my mind around what a meta truth is. Could you kind of explain to me, like I'm 5, what a meta truth is?
A meta truth is a truth which is more true than true. So in a sense, a meta truth reflects a condition of reality which is so universally applicable. It's compared, like, if you say 2 + 2 is 4, you can say that's sort of a meta truth because that's universally applicable. But like if you say a chair is brown, well, that only applies to that one chair. But every human society which has
okay, so hold on. Okay, so I think of like truth values as a very binary option here. There's true, there's false. All right, this is like as true of a dichotomy as you can get. You're suggesting that there's a third category that's truer than true.
Jackie, which
truth.
is more true? 2 plus 2 is 4 or 2 plus 3 is 5? Which one is more true?
They're equally true.
Okay.
What would
So
be
how
an
can one
example of a
truth be
mathematical equation that
is more true than another one?
No, they're all equally true.
All right. So why do you think some truths are more true than other truths?
Because what I don't mean as in the other ones are not true. What I mean is they reflect a broader experience of the human condition, or a broader rule for how reality manifests. But you also have to define truth because, for example, I'm pretty sure Medard Boss believes, or it was either Ludwig Binswanger or Medard Boss. It was one of the phenomenologists define truth in a more phenomenological way that human beings experience the world around them. But it's not coming quite off the top of my head.
Okay, let me ask you a question. I think roses are beautiful. That is a human experience. Is my thought that roses are beautiful more true than 2 plus 2 equals 4?
It is true to say roses are beautiful, and if that is the experience you inhabit, is as true as saying 2 plus 2 equals 4.
But this is a human experience, so it must be a meta-truth. So roses must be absolute beautiful, and that must be more true than 2 plus 2 equals 4, because that's a meta-truth.
No, I don't.
Okay, let me. Maybe I can ask this. Can you provide us with an example of something that's simply true, and then we've got the example of more true than true, which is, I guess, arithmetic.
No, it's not more. It's hard to quantify. I'm saying you can't really quantify truth. I'm saying it's more applicable.
I'm sorry. You literally said earlier in your definition of metatruth that it's more true than true. So I'm just asking you to give me 2 examples.
It's fantastical phrasing. It's not literally more true than true. It's fantastical phrasing.
Your English teacher fucking hated you in high school, didn't they?
I'm still in high school.
Oh, brother.
What?
That explains everything. We're talking to
I'm
a child.
16 years old.
I think, yeah, we need to tone down
You're
the
how
language.
old?
We're talking to a child.
I'm 16
I'm sorry,
years
I did
old.
not realize that we were talking to a child. How old are you again?
He said 16.
Oh, you're 16. I need to reel it back in then. Sorry.
Yeah.
But do you know who Soren Kierkegaard was?
Who?
Soren Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard.
No.
What would you be your response to his argument for acceptance of faith called the leap of faith?
I would have to know what the argument is first.
I'm not really a Kierkegaard scholar, so it's harder for me to explain. I haven't read him. I've heard Jordan Peterson reference him. I think it was before Nietzsche, although I might be wrong. But he was, one of the early existentialists, and he was, unlike Nietzsche, he was a Christian. But basically, his idea of the leap of faith, to my understanding, is that being itself. So, according to him, there's the aesthetic sphere, the ethical sphere, and the religious sphere. And that being in the religious sphere requires taking a step back from human rationality and sort of having a deep dive into an experience with the eternal, which is what the leap of faith is. But it's hard for me to describe because I'm not as knowledgeable about Kierkegaard, or I haven't heard as much about him as I heard of Peterson.
Okay.
I mean,
I have to admit, right now I'm a little unsure as to whether or not I should be talking to you, because I feel like maybe that's a bad idea for me to talk to you about this. But I am not. I'll say this: I'm not convinced by Jordan Peterson's ambiguous argument for God existing. It seems like Jordan Peterson wraps up his ideology in fancy words, and he convinces a lot of people about it, but it ultimately is just generically wrapping up God to represent things that he can latch onto, but that they're all speculatively claimed. Like there's no actual hard evidence of God being representative of things like in us, or our consciousness or our instincts as being representations of God. What Jordan Peterson does is he takes these concepts and he redefines them in a way that makes them God, but that means that God can literally be anything. And when you ambiguously define things in that way, you essentially make communication pointless. And so that's why I'm not convinced of it. He's just redefining things so that he can call it God, and that's not evidence.
Jackie, if you don't mind, there's something I'd like to say. And that is, have you ever heard of Mark Driscoll or Wayne Grudem?
I've not heard, well, I don't remember hearing of either of those two names.
Okay, that's okay. And I wouldn't necessarily expect you to, especially if you're not a Calvinist. But when I switched from Arminianism to Calvinism, one of the big draws for me was the pseudo-intellectualism, and particularly the pseudo-intellectualism of Mark Driscoll and Wayne Grudem, who are both very intelligent people and write very difficult books to read. I mean, you almost need a dictionary right next to you in order to read their books. And I read Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology, and I read a couple of Mark Driscoll's books, which ones I can't even recall off the top of my head. And I was convinced that this was a more real, a more correct theology, and that's why I switched to Calvinism. And I really feel like you are in the same place that I was when I switched from Arminianism to Calvinism, is you're getting sucked in by this pseudo-intellectualism, because that's exactly what Jordan Peterson is. He sounds smart. He sounds like he really knows what he's talking about. But when you dig in deep to what he really has to say, it all falls apart, as John and I were showing you with this whole meta-truth thing. And I was trying to show you with the thing that I like roses. There's someone else that might hate roses, and their personal experience is that they think roses are ugly. And so my truth that roses are beautiful and that person's truth that roses are ugly, neither one of them is more true. They're just both our experiences. And so there really is no such thing as a meta-truth. And I'd just like you to chew on that for a bit.
Okay. One more argument, and then we might want to wrap it up. Are either of you guys familiar with a more recent Christian theologian named William Lane Craig?
Oh, yeah. Low bar bill.
So, William Lane
Low
Craig
bar
presents an
bill.
interesting argument for the existence of God that is a little bit different from Peterson's, because unlike Peterson, William Lane Craig doesn't necessarily come at it from a more psychological, phenomenological perspective, but from the Kalam cosmological argument, which is basically the idea that everything in reality that we've observed so far has cause, which caused it to happen. Therefore, the nature of reality and existence itself, as say the physical universe, had to have a cause, and that unmoved cause would be God. Is I guess the rough summary I would give of that argument.
Okay, except you've assumed you've begged the question there, because the question was, does God exist? And your response was, everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Therefore, God is the cause of the universe. There's nothing in that argument that says that God is the cause of the universe coming into being. The only thing that the Kalam addresses is that the universe had a cause. It has nothing to do with the existence or non-existence of a God.
At least in context of the referred William Lane Craig reference, it has to do with God being, I guess you could say, Aristotle's unmoved mover, which is a necessary contingent for the rest of existence in the universe.
Right. He makes that argument, but that's not part of the Kalam itself. That's a separate argument.
Right. Yeah, I agree there, Godless Granny. And as far as the Kalam goes, even if we were to grant like the first premise and everything, you're making a logical leap there at the end when you say that causes God. I mean, like, I can agree that this particular iteration of our universe inflated at one point, and therefore it, quote unquote, began to exist. So, I mean, even if I grant you that portion of it, you're making a leap that God is the only reason for that. I mean, we don't know what came before it. If we go with the assumption that absolutely nothing existed prior to the inflation of our universe, then there's no causal law in the first place to constrain existence to being that, everything that comes into existence has a cause. Like, that just simply doesn't exist at that point. So therefore a universe could pop into existence from nothing, because there's nothing to constrain reality in that way. So that's one particular argument that I've actually recently come to know, and have been convinced by. That's why the Kalam cosmological argument isn't all that fantastic, because it makes a lot of assumptions. And at the very end of it, you have to make these logical leaps in order to connect it to a God, like in general, not only like a Yahweh, which is a more specific version of God, but just in general, a God creating, a creator God creating the universe. So you have to make a logical leap that says that. And I mean, the unmoved mover thing has been proven to be not indicative of reality, as far as our reality goes, or our universe goes, because materials or things that are in motion are natural things, but things at rest are also just as natural. So there's no need for a prime mover in that situation. Like, there's nothing that needs to start the domino effect from that particular argument, at least, because both states are naturally occurring. So I mean, it's just the Kalam all around just is not impressive to me.
Jackie, do you know why we call William Lane Craig Low Bar Bill?
No.
Okay. There was somebody named Kyle that called in a question to him, and in his response to Kyle, he made the statement, far from raising the epistemic bar, when it comes to belief in God, I lower it. He then goes on to say, if there's one chance in a million that this is correct, I'm going to believe it. And that's part of the reason why we have a hard time taking William Lane Craig seriously, is because he says that his epistemology sets the standard of proof for whether or not God exists so low as to be, if there is just one chance in a million that he's correct, he's going to believe it. The other thing that he did that really shot his credibility is watch his conversation with Alex O'Connor on the slaughter of the Canaanite children. And he says that he defends divine command theory, that slaughtering Canaanite children is morally acceptable if God says to do it, which to me, that lacks all credibility. A God that can order the slaughter of children is not a moral God.
When it comes to biblical morality, you have to recognize that if God is the creator of everything, he can command his subjects to do whatever he wants. I guess you could say the flaw you're pointing out in the Kalam is that it only points to a cause, but not the cause of God, and that it's possible that because if nothing existed before the existence of the physical universe, there would be no law causing, necessitating a first cause, correct? Is what you're saying?
Well, yeah, that's how the argument goes. If you have absolutely nothing like whatsoever, then there's no causal principle to constrain anything to require a cause for the beginning of the universe.
But then you'd have to. But then the question is, can something which exists come from something which doesn't exist?
If there's no, I mean, but you're introducing a law. I mean, you're introducing some kind of concept to this absolute nothing, and you're constraining it. And so by de facto, you're automatically supposing a universe existing. And so, I mean, what I'm saying is absolutely nothing exists. There's no laws to constrain, like there's no logical impossibility in a universe popping into existence out of nothing. because there's nothing
But
that says
I
that
don't.
there has
But
to
I
be
don't
something
believe it.
there.
But I don't. I don't believe it's possible for absolutely nothing to exist.
I
Okay.
mean, I'm not saying whether or not, like, I'm not saying that actually happened. I'm just saying, like, even if we go back, like, to where nothing exists, you know, you don't have anything to constrain it to require there to be something in order for something to come into existence. I don't know what happened before the inflation of our universe. I don't know if this is the first iteration of our universe. So, given that, all that I can know is that at one point in our past, our particular universe inflated, and that's all that we can know. What happened before that, what occurred before that, we just simply don't know. If it was absolutely nothing, then there's nothing to constrain it, to constrain reality from needing something to be there in order for our universe to inflate.
But I'm saying the idea of absolute nothing in reality, to me, that sounds incoherent.
Well, I
don't
don't
see how it's
we don't
incoherent.
necessarily say that there ever was a time when there was absolutely nothing.
I
I don't
know
think there was ever a
saying that's
time
not
when
even a
there's nothing.
possibility. I'm saying there's a 0% chance probability that nothing ever, absolute nothing ever exists. Is what I'm saying.
How can you prove that?
It's not about proof. I'm just saying it's an incoherent logical possibility. As long as existence exists, for example, you said there would be no law saying that nothing can't, or something can't come from nothing in a world of absolute nothingness. But then you'd also have to say, well, then can't something come from nothing? Well, then you'd have to say it has the ability to create something from nothing. That's an active
Jackie,
proposition, not a negative
in
proposition.
your theology, Jackie, in your theology, what existed before God created the universe?
God.
Just in a spaceless, like, I'm not understanding the whole spaceless, timeless thing. Like, if there is no space, if there is no time, where is God existing at exactly?
God is infinite.
Where does the infinity fit?
What did you say?
Where is the infinity?
The infinity just exists. I mean, I don't know whether or not
but if there's no space, then how can infinity fit in no space? You're talking about a logical inconsistency on my part with this whole nothing aspect. But then you're telling me that God doesn't need space to exist within, but at the same time, he's also infinite in some kind of way. I don't know how to conceptualize that. Like, this seems to be like a logical contradiction here in your own hypothesis.
I mean, well, it's hard to explain. It's just God is not a physical entity.
Can God act in a physical world if he has no physical attributes?
God is all powerful, so he can, yes, he can intervene in the physical world.
How?
Because he's all powerful.
You're defining the problem away. I mean, you're making the claim that he's all powerful and therefore he can do everything because he's all powerful.
Yes, that is what I'm claiming.
Okay, it's circular reasoning.
What do you mean circular reasoning?
God can do everything because he's all powerful. He can make the universe because he's all powerful. He's all powerful because I said so.
Well, yes, that's part of my theology. You were asking what my theology is. That's what my theology tells me.
Okay, so you've created God in your own image.
That is my understanding of the reality of existence.
Exactly. So you created the God.
Well, no, that's what I believe. God exists independent of my consciousness. That's just me describing
He
the God
exists.
that I
He exists in your mind because that's the way you believe him to be.
Yes, but I believe he also exists outside of my mind.
Only because you believe that. I mean, if you quit believing that, would he continue to exist outside of your mind?
Yes, because, well, at least according to my
How do
current
you know?
understanding. What do you mean, how do I know? That's what I believe.
How do you know God has any existence outside of your mind?
That's just what I believe.
Which
You
is
want me to show you
inside your
on that?
mind.
My belief is inside my mind.
Right.
But what are you asking me?
How do you
can't
know
figure
your
it out.
God exists anywhere outside of your mind?
What do you mean by no? I can't give you a math equation.
No. That's not what we're like.
Okay.
What evidence do you have that your God exists independent of you? Like what, like if I've got evidence that my wife exists independently of me because of, she has different financial things that are tagged to her name and her essence and everything like that. Like I could, if I wanted to, I could prove that she exists separate from me. So
I
what
can
can
also
you do
attest
that
to
for
she
God?
exists. I've met her.
Yeah.
Logically, I accept that an eternal being creating the laws of the universe and reality which we inhabit is the most likely explanation for the nature of our existence. So I can't prove it to you in a physical sense, like in a science experiment. But I mean, take it or leave it. That's just the most logical explanation for the reality that we inhabit.
I get you, Jackie. Let me propose this. Okay. In my mind, I'm believing right now in a snuggly puff that exists right next to me. Okay. It's a cuddly creature. It's kind of like a Pokemon. And so, yeah, well, yeah, not you, honey. You're not a snuggly puff. So I got a snuggly puff here, and I believe, yes, you are snuggly, and I believe in that snuggly puff, but I can't produce any kind of physical evidence that snuggly puff exists. So why, do you believe me when I say that this snuggly puff exists, and loves me, cares about me, cares about what I do, and
is
can
the
even
snuggly
get
puff
me
you're
into?
describing is it a physical or metaphysical entity?
I'm just saying that I believe in this entity, and this entity, calms me,
I'm asking,
makes
is
me
it
feel good
physical or
about myself and
metaphysical?
everything like that.
I'm
What-
asking if
what's
it's
your
physical
question?
or
It describes you
metaphysical.
completely, huh?
It's metaphysical.
Yeah.
No, I do not believe any metaphysical sniggly thing that you could call a jigglypuff or snigglypuff or whatever, snugglypuff or whatever you said exists.
Right.
Why not?
So
Because there's no evidence that said metaphysical snugglypuff exists.
right.
Ta-da!
So
You've just
for
explained our
your
position.
God, right? Apply that to your God. You believe in this God, and this God has metaphysical properties for you, and this God's a metaphysical being, and you can't provide evidence that this God exists. So it's kind of like, why should we believe in your metaphysical God?
Well, because the necessary contingent for the existence of our universe is an uncaused causer, in my which I believe is the most logical explanation for our existence. So that's a logical
And that's my
argument,
snuggly
or not even
puff.
some deduction.
That's my snuggly puff. My
So
snuggly puff did all.
your snuggly puff did what?
Created the universe.
Created the universe and everything.
No, I don't believe the snuggly puff created the universe. Or I don't believe I would describe.
What evidence do you have to prove my belief wrong? It's a metaphysical being that created the universe and provides me with eternal salvation after I die. How can you prove me wrong about that if it's a metaphysical being that requires no evidence?
Because, well, if it doesn't have evidence, or it doesn't have a logical reason to believe it.
It has as much logical reason as your God does.
No, because my God doesn't have all this extra baggage that comes with it. My God is just a necessary contingent for existence that had to eternally exist for everything else to come into existence. Right? It's the eternal being.
No,
right?
no, no. I'm defining my
design.
snuggly puff in the exact same way that you're defining your God right now. So I mean, like none of that applies to my snuggly puff over here.
I mean that, but that goes against Occam's razor, right? Occam's razor says the most likely explanation is one with. I'm pretty sure I don't know the exact phrasing, but it's something like the most likely explanation is one with the fewest leaps you have to make.
Assumptions.
Something like that.
Yes.
Fewest
assumptions. Yes. The idea of an eternal God that doesn't have a physical form is much less, carries with it much less baggage than a snuggly puff does. So it's closer to Occam's razor.
How not? My snuggly puff is not corporeal. I mean, it's defined exactly the same way that you're defining God. So I don't see how it. Your
if you call God snuggly puff, then God, if you can call God snuggly puff, you can do that. It's not snuggly puff, but yes, you can call God whatever you want. You can call him Jim if you like. But if you're just defining God the same God that I do, yes, we would believe the same thing. We just call it different things.
Oh no! My snuggly puff's much better than your God of the Bible, which I'm guessing is the one that you're going with here, since you invoked William Lane Craig. My snuggly puff is far better than your God. Huh?
I believe that the Abrahamic religions that presented themselves throughout the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, best represent the archetype of God that I believe is true.
Okay.
So,
now let's go back a minute to your Occam's razor. You were saying that by Occam's razor we should accept the premise that has the fewest assumptions. Now, assuming that there is a supernatural being for which we have no evidence, that created the world through a mechanism for which we have no evidence, a mechanism that we cannot test, a mechanism that we have never seen again, that has a lot of baggage with it and a lot of assumptions. If we look at the universe coming into existence through a natural process, we don't know all of the ins and outs of this process. We do not know the exact mechanism of what caused the universe to begin to expand. But we do know that at some point, which we call the beginning of time, that time and space began to expand, and that was the beginning of the universe. This has far fewer assumptions than assuming that a supernatural being, poof, brought it into being. By Occam's razor, it is the more logical choice.
But the God hypothesis explains what happened before the Big Bang happened.
No, it doesn't.
Whatever it does explain that.
Well,
first of all, it's logically impossible for anything to happen before the Big Bang, because that would be before time, and before time is an incoherent concept.
Well, God existed eternally, so he would have existed before the physical universe existed. But what, in your opinion, what existed before the Big Bang if it wasn't God?
We don't know.
I don't know.
Well, what do you accept?
But do you understand how claiming that God was there before our universe inflated, as you recognize that as a speculative claim?
It's a logical argument I'm making from deduction.
No, right, you're not. I mean, there's no logical deduction that gets you to a God existing. I mean, that's a possible answer, but it's not like, oh, unless you can prove me wrong, then God existed prior to the universe existing. That's not how anything works in logical argumentation. It's called a presumption.
The law of the physical universe that I inhabit is everything which exists has a cause, and like I'm just using the cause as the thing that happened before.
Let me pause you right there, Jackie. Let me pause you right there. Do you recognize that the universe, as you experience it, started with the inflation of this universe?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know the state of things prior to the inflation of our universe? Because you just said that, you know, the causal principle is what we experience in this universe, but then you're shifting it and talking about what occurred prior to this universe. So who's to say that causal principle existed prior to the universe's inflation?
Because I haven't heard of another hypothesis which convinced me that there was some other way it could have come without the causal principle. Like I haven't heard of a convincing argument, which is why I'm asking you to present it, or convincing hypothesis rather.
How many other hypotheses have you read about and learned about?
What was that again? Sorry, I was just hanging up on a call.
How many other hypotheses for the beginning of the universe have you read about?
Not many. I mean, I'm not really a big science guy, and I hear some.
Okay, and I get that, and some of them are very difficult to read. And I'm not a science person either, and I've had to take a couple cosmology papers that I've looked at and had to go to people who study cosmology and ask them to digest them and explain them to me at a level that I can understand. And so that's a perfectly acceptable answer. But before you can say for sure that it is a God, I think you need to at least look into what some of the other possibilities are.
And
we are going to need to jump off here because I mean, we've been talking for about 45 minutes now, and we still got at least one more caller to get to. But I feel like maybe what you're not recognizing is the fact that you're just de facto assuming your position and are only willing to let go of it, like if I give you evidence of an alternate. But I think that what you need to do is shift your thinking around and be like, well, I do need evidence to accept an alternate conclusion about what happened prior to the inflation of the universe. But I also need to be asking, along with this, what evidence do I have of my preconceived notion about what existed prior to the universe, or prior to the inflation of our universe? And, you would need to support that not with like some kind of logical deduction that is circular in nature, like you've been providing us, but I feel like what you need to do is think about what actual evidence you have for a number of the assumptions that you have in your hypothesis, like the assumption that the causal principle transfers between our universe existing and prior to that. Also, the assumptions of deities existing in a spaceless form, spaceless, timeless form for that matter, but also being infinite. Like, there's just a lot of assumptions that you've kind of baked in and you automatically accepted as being true. But I think that you really need to refocus yourself and think, well, what evidence do I have that definitely suggests that those are the things that most likely existed? Not just that that's what I've already believed and that's what I've always been taught and all this other stuff. What actual evidence do you have that says that the causal principle needed to have existed prior to the inflation of this universe, as well as all the other stuff?
I also want to say real quick, Jackie, I think it was very brave of you to call in here. And at your age, to have the I don't know the word, but the bravery to stand up and talk to two atheists that are a lot older than you are, that good on you. And you keep asking questions.
Okay.
I want to echo what Godless Granny just said. I definitely wouldn't have made the bath salts comment if I had known that you were under 18. So sorry about that there, Jackie.
Okay.
I do hope that you'll call in again with some more questions for other hosts. There are more.
Let them know that you're a minor.
Better at talking to children. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Jackie, for calling in. I appreciate you.
Okay, and I appreciate your graciousness.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. You have a good night, and do call in again.
Okay. You too.
Bye. I hated to stop.
I wanted to say, but I was too afraid to say it with a minor.
Yeah. I trust me. I know the feeling.
Yeah, there was a refutation of William Lane Craig's divine command theory But to suggest something as horrific as what I had in mind for a minor could be taken as a suggestion. And I thought, boy, I better keep that to myself.
Oh yeah, you could tell that I was showing a lot of restraint there after he said, "Oh, I'm 16." Oh,
Yeah.
I better not.
I think from now on we
Keep
need
talking.
to ask callers how old they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Should it?
I once had a
All right.
12-year-old on my show along with his mother. And so, I definitely had parental consent because I had the mother right there. But it was really interesting. I thought the 12-year-old was a lot sharper than his mother.
I think I remember when that kid was going around some of the channels. So yeah, I mean he was pretty good. All right, so we're gonna jump to Mike. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to the atheist caller that we got on the line because we've got over a pretty good bit. But Mike is a theist, and we prioritize theists. So sorry about that. The other atheists that we have on the line there, but we got Mike from Ohio, I think that is. What's up there, Mike?
Howdy, y'all. My
Quick
name
question,
is Mike
Mike.
Hawk.
How old are you?
I'm 18, madam.
You're 18?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, well, at least you're
We'll keep this
18.
pretty clean
but,
then. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, what's your question?
If God doesn't exist, what is the purpose of life?
What's the purpose of life?
If God doesn't
Yeah.
exist, what's the purpose of life?
Okay, the purpose of life is whatever purpose
That's
I
right.
give it to, which is the same as it is even if there is a God.
I don't understand you. No,
Okay. If there is a God, are you a determinist or not?
am I a determinist? Yes.
Yeah. Did God predestine you to belief or did you choose to believe?
Wow. That's a deep question that you've asked, man. I believe in predetermination and I believe in free will.
Those are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
They're not mutually exclusive. I don't
Can
think
you
understand
explain that?
what well, God knows what's going to happen, but we also have free will. I mean, how
Okay.
difficult is that to understand?
Did you choose to believe in God?
Did I choose to believe in God?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got the free will to choose or not to choose. Does that make sense?
Okay.
If I don't want
Yeah.
to believe in God right now, free will.
Okay. Do you
So
believe in God?
you
Do I believe in God? Of course,
Yeah.
madam.
Okay.
Of course,
And you
I do.
believe in God because you choose to believe in God?
I believe in God. It's of my own volition.
Okay. And
okay.
does God give you your purpose?
Does God give me a purpose?
Mm-hmm.
God has given all of mankind a purpose.
Okay. And by choosing to believe in God, you chose to accept that purpose, correct?
No, madam. There's an objective purpose in life outside of my being. Whether I choose to
What is
believe in
that?
God or not, it doesn't.
What's
doesn't
that
change
absolute
the purpose of
purpose?
life. Well,
What's that absolute
the
purpose?
reason I called it. Well, the reason I called it was if God doesn't exist, what is the purpose of life?
I get what your question was, but what we're asking you is what is that absolute purpose that you're talking about? Like you think that there's a transcendental purpose to life, and it's outside of I guess your religion, or it's just something that's absolutely true. What is that?
Well, it's not just one purpose. That's just, being myopic. There's
Okay.
multiple
So then
purposes
if
to
there
life.
isn't a one purpose to life, then you've answered your own question. There is no purpose to life.
No, I didn't say there's more than one purpose.
I'm sorry. I just asked you what the absolute purpose is to life, and you said there's not just one,
No,
and now you're saying that there is just one.
But your question is a loaded question. You're saying there's an absolute purpose. I'm not talking about an absolute purpose. I'm talking there can be multiple purposes.
Okay.
And of course,
can we pick and choose which purposes we want?
I beg your pardon?
Do we pick and choose which purposes we want?
I think you cut out, madam.
I said, do we pick and choose? Do we choose which purposes we want?
Well, you have the free will, but that.
So yes,
you have free will to choose purpose.
Okay, then that's the answer to your question. Life has whatever purpose you choose to give it.
Is that the purpose that you define yourself by?
I don't define myself by a purpose.
You don't define that, but surely there must be purpose to life, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
that?
that?
I do agree that there's a purpose to life, yes. And that purpose to life is whatever I choose. What?
Your purpose to life is whatever you choose? Such
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. One of the things that I do with my time is I am a CASA volunteer. I'm a court-appointed special advocate. I choose that purpose because I value children, and I particularly value serving underprivileged children. And so I have chosen that purpose to be one of the purposes of my life, is to use my time and my energy to serve underprivileged children.
Well, that's mighty good of you. But is that the only purpose of your life?
No, that is not the only purpose of my life. That is just one.
Do you have another?
Mm-hmm.
Please share with us.
Okay. Another one I have is to try to achieve equality for the LGBTQ community. There are a lot of people in that community that are oppressed. There are a lot of people in this country that are trying to take away their rights. And so I advocate for equality for the LGBTQ community.
What do you mean by achieve equality? What do you mean? In the workplace or
being
something?
allowed to have the same rights.
They already have the same rights as everybody there. Let's say in America, every man is equal.
No, they don't.
Well,
when you've got people telling
everybody's equal.
No, that's not even true. I mean, trans people in a lot of states are not even able to use the restroom that they for the gender they identify as. So no, they're not treated equally.
People have trouble getting health care.
But do they have restrooms?
You're cutting out
but
there.
Do they have bathrooms?
How to use a restroom?
No. No. See, you're playing. If so, let me translate this to something that you might understand. Back in the 50s or so, there were colored water fountains and white people watered fountains. Now, both groups had water fountains, but it's the fact that they separated them out and like what they called colored people at the time couldn't use the white water fountains. And of course, the white people weren't going to use the quote unquote colored water fountains. And you're suggesting the exact same thing here. Oh, but they still have a place to piss and shit in. Does it really matter if you're going to force a trans man to go into the women's restroom? That shouldn't matter because they still have a pot to piss in. When that's not, you're totally missing the entire thing.
And that is exactly my son's problem. My son does not feel comfortable in a men's room. And he doesn't feel comfortable in a ladies' room either. He's perfectly fine in a gender neutral room, but not all places have a gender neutral restroom.
Yeah, but nobody's talking about black feminism. But we're talking about biology, right? It's all about biology.
Oh my
no, that's exactly the problem. It's not about biology.
You understand that I was giving you an analogy that I hope you would understand with the white people versus black people water fountains, right? Like that's an analogy that hopefully you can process.
I understand. Well, I can process, but you know, the last caller, you couldn't process his argument. He was talking. He was trying. He's a young kid, 16 years old. Do you understand the contingency argument?
I mean, yes. I've been doing this for nearly 12 years now. So yes, I understand all the arguments and I understood what he was talking about.
Please explain the contingency argument.
I'm not going to sit here and regurgitate apologetics for you. I don't have anything to prove to you about the last caller. We're talking about your arguments for God existing. And your argument for God existing seems to boil down to, well...
My initial question wasn't about me proving to you if God exists. My question was, if God doesn't exist, what is the purpose of life? Well, God looks grand.
And I gave you some.
LGBT rights and equality and being an advocate in the court. Do you think that?
Mike, look, Mike.
Do you think that's the purpose of life for mankind?
I think the purpose of life and mankind is to make this world the best place that it can be.
Wait, maybe it's coming back. Yeah, so Mike, Godless Granny gave you a couple of purposes for her life. So you specifically asked, if God doesn't exist, what is the purpose of life? And you asked both of us. I could give you any number of purposes for my life or whatever. Like, the point of the fact is that a purpose to life isn't dependent upon a God existing. So we've already answered that question. And then we moved on to asking you what you think the purpose of life is, if you believe in your God. And you seem to believe that God is the only one that can give life a purpose. And you spoke about it as if there was one purpose to life. But then you admit that there's multiple purposes to life. And then when we challenge that, you're back to there being one purpose to life or something like that. I don't even know how we got onto the LGBTQ, which I guess it was because you advocate for, well, both of us advocate for LGBTQ individuals, but or equality. So, I mean, I really don't know where in the rabbit hole we fucking are in this conversation, but we've answered your initial question. What we want to know is what purpose does God give your life, or what purpose does God give human lives?
Thank you for unmuting me. The purpose of life, Godless Granny, you were saying that what is the purpose of life for mankind?
Yes. The betterment of mankind.
What is the purpose of life for mankind? To do what? Sorry?
Just to live. Our only purpose is to live and to try to make life better for those around us and for ourselves.
what do you understand by better? Oh,
Why do I understand what?
What's your definition of better?
We're not going to get into these semantic games about defining every single word. It's like what it depends on what the meaning of is.
Do you have a point?
I do have a point.
Is there something you actually? Well, then go ahead and make your point.
I do have a point.
Well, make your point.
Well, I've just demonstrated, ma'am, with all respect, Godless Granny, that you just said the purpose of mankind is just to live. Well, that's a stupid purpose. No, we are already living. It's circular.
You're not a serious caller. You're not a serious individual.
The purpose of life is to worship God.
Oh, which God?
Well, then you go off and worship your God and have at it. What are you doing here? If your purpose is to worship God, go worship your God.
Well, I'm trying to spread the message.
Well, I thought you
so let me get this
the contingency argument.
So let me get this straight. Jesus is not satisfied with you sucking his dick. So you have to advocate for other people to suck his dick. Sorry, I had muted him. I'll unmute him now.
Hello, sorry. I think you muted me.
No, you're back on.
What was the question, sir? Hello?
I'm here. I'm just incredibly frustrated. I was just boiling it down to like, well, you apparently Jesus wasn't satisfied with you praising him, so you have to come and advocate and bother other people to get them to praise him. Is that it?
Well,
why is your God so insecure that he needs people to praise him?
I'm a Muslim.
Mike?
You're not a Muslim.
Excuse me?
Mike? Why is your God so insecure that he needs people to praise him?
John, did you just say you're not a Muslim?
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done because you can. I mean, you obviously can be a Muslim. I'm just sitting here
talking about equality and rights, LGBT. That was so presumptuous, John. You should apologize.
You sound like you ride on a boat in the bayou, and then you're like, I'm a Muslim. And so, yeah, my first instinct is like, you're not a Muslim. But I mean, obviously you could be a Muslim. I mean, that was a little out of line of me. Fine. But I'm just saying, like, you don't, it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, Christian.
That. Finally, I appreciate that, John.
Okay. So why is your God so insecure that he needs people to praise him?
It's not about insecurity, man.
Then why does he need people to praise him?
That's just your misunderstanding.
Why does God need people to praise him?
Well, what's interesting, Godless Granny, is you actually used to believe in a God.
Yep,
so
I did.
Are you saying that you did? Exactly. So are you saying that you're more smarter now, that you don't believe in a God?
More smarter?
I wouldn't say I'm smarter. I would say that I've come to realize that what I believed was incorrect. I definitely believe that I overlooked some of the things that proved that the God didn't exist.
Oh,
could you explain your?
Hold on, sorry, I muted him. I just realized that he's calling from what has been identified as Virginia, but he says he's from Ohio. I feel like this guy's just lying. Like this is him just being a troll. Yeah, we have, and we.
You guys didn't even hear.
Go ahead.
When he got online, he had originally wanted to be put in the queue as Mike Hawk and wanted you to introduce him that way. Stephanie didn't put Hawk as his last name. He said it at the beginning, but it didn't seem like either of you caught it. So he's definitely a troll.
I didn't catch it.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't see that. I only saw the Mike later. I remember seeing a Mike Hawk.
Yeah.
But I mean, anyways, yeah, I don't think that was not a serious caller. You could tell he was just going around in circles. We do have super chats to get through, but we've also been at this for a longer than I had intended us to be. So, so just getting right to it, Ian Davenport sent a super chat sticker for $10. Thank you so much there, Ian. Godless Granny, would you mind reading the next one?
$5 from the Raven, from Raven 200. Just because I want a Jimmy, I blame you for the audio issues. Damn, Jimmy. Go take a sweet chin music from Shawn Michaels and then a stink face from Rikishi. I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
Rikishi? I think these are wrestlers.
Oh.
$5 from Monkey at Typewriter says women must submit sexually to their husbands. Wonder if there's any evidence that this was concocted by men. I want Godless Granny as my granny.
I would be happy to adopt you. I have lots of adopted grandchildren. $9.99 from Rick Von Mauer. Comment: I feel guilty for sending our kids to a Christian school. They're teenagers now. I have tried to sow doubts and tried to teach them to think critically, but I think the damage has been done. I did the same thing, Rick. I sent all 3 of my kids to Christian school all throughout their K through 12. My oldest is a committed Baptist. My middle child doesn't care one way or the other. And my youngest is the one that brought me to atheism. We were on pins and needles the last couple months of my son's till my son's graduation from Christian school, in fear that he would be kicked out of school 2 months before graduation for being an atheist.
Man, that's got to be stressful.
Yeah, it was. We were so happy when we had the diploma in hand and we could finally say, we're atheists.
Can't take it back. No backsies.
That's right.
5 pound or no euros. I believe that's euros. 5 euros from Ektril Pog. Today I learned 40% of Americans are young Earth creationists. It blew my mind. I thought there were just a few of them, Hovens and the AIGs. They're starting to get on up there, like as far as the number of creationists out there, at least people that believe in a creator sort of beginning to the universe and everything. There's still a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
It doesn't help that Mike Johnson is a creationist.
Yeah, and all of the people in Congress that are creationists that want to push creationism on kids, like that's also scary.
Mm-hmm. $5 from Monkey at the Typewriter again. Conspiracy theory: Jim Henson didn't die. He built a remote android and is secretly Jordan Peterson. Have you seen JP and Kermit in the same room?
No, but they sound the same, so maybe. $5 from Carissa Grimm, who says, does anyone have a facepalm count on John? It's at least 5 by now. I don't know how many times I've facepalmed, but it was a staggering number.
$5 from Skeptalk. Defining God into existence via the Kalam fails from its first premise. Everything that begins to exist has a cause to its existence. Point 1.
Yeah, that's the argument that I was trying to make. $5 from Skeptalk, who says logic would dictate that if all existence has a cause and God is part of everything, then there would need to be a cause for God to exist. Yeah. And also the whole spaceless and timeless and immaterial thing. Like, I don't know how that actually practically works out. Like, if you're saying that God existed prior to space and time existing, like, I don't even know how that's supposed to work other than magically.
Right. Mm-hmm. $5 from Carissa Grimm. Someone needs to tell John about Dath from Chewed Gum.
Well, yeah, I haven't been able to catch a chewed gum yet, but what's dath?
No clue.
I don't actually know. I don't produce chewed gum most days, so I've missed out on their inside jokes. But yeah, I don't know. I can't help.
That just means I'm gonna have to go and watch some chewed gum, and then I'll figure it out. So, but I think that's I think that was all. Yep, that was all. So if you guys will, if you want. Yeah, if you guys will, please go support Godless Granny by subscribing to Godless Granny. We've got links that are in the live chat. We've also got links in the description if you want to go and subscribe to either Godless Granny or myself. And also, don't forget to support us here on the line by going to patreon.com/call the line, and you can support us on there. There's also options here on YouTube like memberships and super thanks. I think that's a new thing. Also that you can do to help support the channel here. So definitely consider all of that. And I guess we will see you heathens on Sunday. We've got the first Sunday show, and then the second, I don't know who's on the first Sunday show, but the second Sunday show I'm on with Paulogia. So I guess we'll see you guys on Sunday.
Live your life.
Yeah, maybe they won't have too many troll callers on Sunday.